Sexin and Flexin on YouTube. Go give them a follow right now. Go subscribe to their YouTube channel. I had an amazing podcast with them. It was an awesome time. Don't sleep on those guys, please.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Sexin and Flexin Live Sunday. We got my co-host Levi and Eric Lee.
Hey, what's up, guys?
What's up, man? Welcome in. Welcome in. Thank you again for coming on, Eric. I appreciate it. Oh, man. So how's life down there, man? What you got going on?
Nothing much. Right now, I'm down in Chula Vista. Moved out here about 3 years ago from Mesa. Just doing the retake thing full time. So just grinding out snake poop every day.
Nice, man. What drags you to California from Arizona moving from Arizona to California?
My wife's out here. She's a school teacher.
Oh, nice.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure she's making way more out there than here, unfortunately.
Yeah, that and the support. I mean, even though it was like California, like politics aside, just for the education is pretty shitty across the board, in my opinion. But I mean, it is what it is.
Agreed. Yeah, it's really unfortunate the way that education is treated. I mean, it's in all 50 states. It could be so much better than it is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially out here, like there's absolute agendas going on all the time. I'm talking about from like elementary on up, so it's pretty like surprising, you know. Shit, if I had kids, they'd all be homeschooled. They wouldn't be going to public school.
Agreed. It's tough, man, when you got both parents working, because I considered it, and you know, both me and my wife have full-time jobs. It's like, where do we find time to the homeschool?
Yeah, especially out here, like the childcare alone is a damn near mortgage payment for most people. So it's like, that shit's crazy.
That's insane, man. It's too much. It's too much. Yeah. So with that being said, obviously you got some high dollar bills, you know, like everyone else in the country right now. You're able to survive on breeding super dwarfs.
Yep. The biggest thing, like I always told people, like I get messages all the time. People ask about the SC market compared to mainlands. And you got to look at the SC market in terms of two things. First, it's like breeding purebred dogs and cats, where lineage and history, pedigree is everything. A lot of people buy stuff or they pick it up. Oh, I got on Craigslist. It's small. It must be SD. I'm like, yeah, no. It's like, you know, the thing is, yeah, it could be small. It could breed, whatever. But down the road, when you sell it, your buyer, his first thing he's going to ask you is the history of this animal. Where'd you get it? Oh, I got on Craigslist because it's really small. Like, that means nothing, you know? And the second thing is basically, other than the snow, hasn't been much done with SD stuff. I mean, albino anery stuff, yeah, all day long for probably 10 plus years, but all the other morphs that are on the mainland side aren't in the SD side. And people are always like, oh, what should I invest in? First off, you need to invest in, something you enjoy, because you're going to keep this animal, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. It's a 10-year project. Like chasing those, trends is not going to do anything for you. So you definitely got to do something that you enjoy, that you're going to take care of it every day. It's, not people that do it for money, they're never last. So I got back into retics in like 2012, and back then it was mainly the mainland stuff. And I'd say a good portion of those people, like big breeders that were, in the game when I got back into it, are gone now. And the ST is worse because of the fact that you're not getting 30, 40, 50 egg clutches. You're going to get 8 egg, 10, 15, maybe 20-ish, 25-ish if you're lucky. So you're not like genetic odds of, all those multi-gene stuff far and few between. So you just got to plan it out. And that's the biggest thing. It's like, I tell people, like, this is chess, not checkers. Everything has to be planned out like way long in advance. That's the only way you're going to survive.
Agreed. So let's go backwards, right? The buyers that are buying on Craigslist or a Facebook rehome page, it's never, unless the lineage and proven paperwork's there, it's not really worth rolling the dice on, a certain size animal based on expectations. What are the rules when buying a super dwarf, right? For people that want to get into the project, what should they do advice wise when they get into wanting to buy a project?
My biggest advice to them is because pure SCs right now are still pricey. You're probably $1,000 and up, depending on if you're doing there's a difference. There's pure SC, meaning it's 100% pure super dwarf blood, or pure locality labeled animal. So Karampa, Kalatoa, Madu, Coyote, stuff like that. If you're getting it as a pet and you don't care about in terms of it purebred locality, just a pure SC is fine because it's a pet. Same thing I tell people, even say you wanted to get in the snow project. You don't necessarily need a pure Kalatoa, whatever locality. A pure SC will work. And you're going to pay probably not necessarily half, but quite a bit less for a pure SC compared to a pure Kalatoa. So that's things to think about in terms of if you're I don't care about the pure locality stuff. I just want the smallest animal possible. You can do that without that label and just get a pure SC from someone legitimate. Garrett, Daniel, Andrew. There's all kinds of people that are breeding legitimate stuff. And I always tell people, vet whoever you're getting it from. I even tell people, I'm like, hey, if you're buying stuff from me, hey, I'm not offended if you go ask different people. I don't care. I got nothing to hide. You buy from me, great. If you don't, hey, cool, no worries. But at the end of the day, it's going to be you trying to sell that animal or market your project. If you can't back up the genetics, the history, the lineage, all that, it falls back on you. Yeah, your seller could have screwed you up front, but down the road, you're going to screw your buyer when people are like, oh, what's this percentage or the dates or this or that, and they don't match up.
Nice. Okay. Hold on. There was a question in the comments. I don't want to lose it. What makes you passionate about this? Where did you find your passion from getting into the mainlands and the super dwarves? Let's go back in time here.
The mainlands I've always been into. I got my first mainland back in 91 or 92. I don't remember. It's been a really long time. And I was a kid. My first big retic, I saw it to San Diego Zoo. And if you've ever been to San Diego Zoo, their reptile house is super outdated, but basically you walk around the outside perimeter of the house and each four corner of that house has big corner cages. And back in the day when I was a little kid, there was a huge ass retic in one of them. And I mean, as a kid, seeing a giant snake is the coolest shit on earth. So from there on, I always always wanted one. I got one. My parents didn't really care. Actually, it wasn't they didn't care. I just didn't tell them until after I got it. So, I mean, back then retics are what, $40, $50, because they're all farmed imports, meaner than shit. They were throwaway animals. So I actually got that animal, like I said, 91, 92, and I kept it all the way until about 2004 before I sold my entire collection when I went active duty. So, and I've always gone back to retics. I've bred monitors, boas, other pythons and stuff, but a big giant snake is just fucking kick ass. So I've always liked big snakes. Then when I got out of retics, I got out of reptiles completely in 2004, went active duty, did my military thing, all that. Got out in 2012, I got back into it, and I didn't know anything about it. Back when I was into it, import wild caught stuff, albinos and tigers and super tigers, nothing else. And back then I'm not buying, I think the albinos were 10, 15 grand from Jay or whoever, Bob back then, So it's just one of those things where, hey, I had a collection of probably about 60 some retics, 40 some scrub pythons, not back in the day when I sold everything. Most of it meaner than shit. I said most of the retics, they're not friendly, nothing like today. Then when I got back into it, I was like, holy crap, there's all kinds of morphs and this and that. So, and as I got back to it in 2012, I was like, the hell is the super dwarf stuff? That stuff, it was probably around in the 90s. I just didn't know about it, So then I started researching it, and I'm like, the mainlands are cool because when I was in Mesa, my saving grace is because I had probably 30, 40 animals at the time. They're all mainlands. And and I was going through about 300 pounds of rabbit a month, which if you're paying for rabbit, 300 pounds a month, but like I said, my saving grace is I had a hookup out there that would charge me $2 or $3 per rabbit, not pound, but per rabbit. So I didn't really care how many retics I had, because if I'm paying $3 for like a 10, 12 pound rabbit, just, I could do it. Then I started, like, after a while, like, dealing with that, housing, feeding, it's kind of a pain. Then I gradually saw people with the SC stuff, researched it, and I'm like, in my head, I'm like, this is going to be the future of the retic market. Because the mainland stuff is cool, but you look at all the people that or people that are online getting a retic, the mainland stuff, after, like, they'll post pictures of my new pickup, blah, 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 from shows, and that'll go on for about 3-4 months. Then all of a sudden that'll go silent. No pictures, no posts, no updates, because the snake is either dead or gone. Because it's just a lot of snake to handle. Back then, like initially, like in the 90s, it wasn't about, hey, we're going to just slow grow them, this, that. It was about getting the biggest retic in the shortest amount of time, where people were slamming their animals, getting a 12, 14, 15-foot snake in a year. I mean, is it healthy? No. I'm sure those snakes probably maybe made it 10 years old, if that. But I mean, back then, like, everyone was chasing monsters. They didn't really, it wasn't like, oh, the animal's kind of fat, it'll grow it off, it'll wear it off or whatever. But, and everything changed, which it should, like the husbandry side of it now. And I just think that the ST market is way more sustainable. I think a majority of the people that have the mainland stuff right now have no business with it. And that's, in my opinion, based is from the Lacey Act in 2015 when that went down. Because it was shitty that they banned it, but at the same time, a lot of the mainland breeders, and the ones that were in it strictly for money, they dumped everything. Like literally, I think it was April 1st that was supposed to come out in 2015. A week or 2 weeks before, people were like literally dumping entire collections for next to nothing. And now, you look at it now, a lot of people that get the mainland stuff, they look at it as disposable. I'm paying a couple $100, even for breeders, which, if you have no skin in the game and you spend $300-$400 on an animal and you think you're gonna make thousands of dollars and you don't give a shit, you're gonna dump that animal. Whereas on the SC side, for a lot of people getting into it, it's not necessarily like, hey, I'm making money, I want the smallest retic. And to do that, you need to research it. I think those buyers are usually more well informed on getting the animals, researching and doing their homework, instead of randomly going to show and a baby purple albino, it's a kick-ass looking snake, you just buy it. Now people are like, okay, I'm gonna research it first. So it's just one of those things where I think the evolution of keeping and husbandry practices, and most people from the SD side now, they all pretty much agree what we did 5, 10, 15 years ago is completely wrong. Everyone wants these nice, big, elaborate cages. Like even now, all the cages, I run vision for everything. Super simple, sterile as shit and bland as shit, like paper, dog bowl, hide. It works, it's functional, because I have 80 some retics. But do I want that like long term? No. I want everything in pretty much display enclosures, like huge ass enclosures, where people are like, wait, you could go smaller and be just fine. Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's for the snakes, it's not for me. So
that's awesome. So on that, let's go back to the 90s, right? What was it like keeping retics back then? Outside of everyone was chasing monsters, what kind of enclosures were people looking at? Just to give the viewers a perspective of how far we've come.
Back then, like I said, 90, 91, it was homemade enclosures, just modified fish tanks. And as a kid, like when I was like 15, I got my first job. I was at McDonald's making $4 an hour. And I worked, like back then, it was legit 40-hour weeks, fucking child labor laws. Like I worked my ass off. And it's funny because I remember, because I did boas too. I can't remember, but thousands of dollars on a pair of albino boas from the Barkers way back in the day, like Dave and Tracy, great people. 6 months into it, one dies. I come home from school, I'm like, what the dude? I almost had a heart attack. I make $4 an hour. I spent probably, I can't remember, $3,000-$4,000 on that pair of snakes at $4 an hour. I'm like, oh shit. And I just talked to them, and like, it wasn't their fault, animals die. And it's one of those things where, and back then it was hot rocks. I don't even know if any of these newer people know what the hell hot rock is, but that's what you can cook an egg on. So it's just like, and that or the red heat lamps from Home Depot. So it was just a trial and error. Then I think it was like probably later, like mid 90s, we started getting like actual reptile enclosures, where I remember I had a bunch of those 40-gallon breeders, but it was half screen, half glass, but it was a hinge. So you can't put anything above the cage because the whole thing would have to like, flip open stuff. Then they did the full pull out screen tops where it's easier. You could kind of stack them. Then like, I think even back then it was cool because I had the hookups at Vision, because in California high school, I don't know if they have it now or other places, it's called ROP, which is like a regional occupational thing where you're getting ready to leave high school and you're like interested in whatever field, you get an intern in that field. So I ended up getting an internship at Kalamazoo, which is an importer up in Santa Ana. Worked there, and Ty, the owner, like got me connected with Scott, who owned Vision Cages at that time when they were coming out. And I ended up going up to Vision with my brother. I had my learner's permit, rented a U-Haul, and bought a bunch of the Vision 632s. And back then, I think it was like $150 or something like that for them. Bought a bunch of those, and just I've used Visions forever, and they work. I mean, are they the best cages? No, but for the stages, Retic's life, it works up to a point. The bigger stuff, no, but obviously for hatchings on up, 10, 12 feet, you're fine. But yeah, a lot of it is just like I use those giant cane heat pads that people use for livestock for heat pads, because we didn't have rated heat panels and this and that back then. They had I think they had the flex watt and heat cable and stuff, but other stuff, no. So it was like you may do or just kind of jerry rig what you could.
Okay. So we've really, really come a long way.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Modified tanks, that's wild.
Yeah, and I mean, so now let's jump into the future a little bit. I mean, like, let's touch on grow tents, right? Like, it's something that's gaining traction every single day. It feels like, for a mainland at adult size, it may not be plausible, but for like super dwarfs and grow outs, do you think it's a feasible option with your experience?
No, I mean, for exercise, yeah, but for keeping them there permanently, just because of, even a super dwarf, they're super smart and they're super strong. And the thing is, a lot of the retics, like, depending on, even if it's ideally set up, I think there's just too many what ifs with it, And like some retics, for whatever reason, they'll push and smash their face up like from day one. Like my last mainland clutch was in 2019. It was a pied clutch. I had this pied male, what's it, Super Tiger pied or whatever. It hatched. I put it individual in its own individual FB10 like hatching tub. I come back the next day, so it was like 12, 13 hours. Entire face is completely obliterated, smashed up. All the teeth are all busted out already. And I'm just fucking driving me crazy just because. Like some of the like super tigers in general, they have a tendency to push. They might not all push, but I've always been a big proponent of not making super tiger anything because of that. Because I know like the ones I've produced in the past, a lot of them tend to be pushers, and they'll literally do it until like they just don't stop. So, and with grow tents, I know like I've seen people in the groups use them as exercise and this and that, which is totally cool. I wouldn't trust it because of just how smart and how strong retics are. Whether super dwarf, like. The hatchlings, obviously, they're not going to be strong enough, but, they're smart. So it's one of those things where I wouldn't put a retic in anything that isn't 100% escape-proof. That's just me.
Okay. I feel it. And then I don't know if you've seen this. I've seen it come up a handful of times now, and I feel like more and more people are starting to talk about it. The mainlands that are kept in like 8x2x2 PVCs, people are seeing that they're pushing out of them.
They push out, they flex. My opinion, like right now, I have a 17-foot Super Sun. She's in Vision, and I fucking hate it. But just life, space. I was working on building a new retic facility. I got absolutely hosed by the contractor because he's a fucking piece of shit. So I'm going to litigation, state license board, all that. So that's on hold for the time being. But the cage is functional and it's secured. But I've known people that have Vision cages where the girls, like, it's all one piece minus the glass and the screens, and they've pushed and they're on tracks so the glass falls out. I've had them, like I've heard their animals like slamming the glass to the point they shatter. Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? No. They work. But in my opinion, we need way bigger cages. It's just one of those things where, like I said, 90s and even early 2000s, everyone's like, retics like small, comfortable cages. They'll do fine, they'll breed. Well, yeah, they'll breed. But that's a biological drive. That's not because they're thriving in it. They're surviving, but they're not thriving in the cage, So it's one thing to say, hey, I want to put it in a huge, nice, elaborate enclosure if you had one snake. But most retic people I know don't have just one retic. Just like ball python people. You might, as a kid, you have a pet, but most adults have a ball python. They're like, oh, I have one. No, I have like 200, 300, 400 of them. You know, it's just one of those things where it gets to the point where like you got to compromise. It's shitty, especially with the retics of how big they get, which is why I said after that pied clutch, I was done. I won't breed mainlands because I don't think the market can sustain it. And more importantly now is I don't think there's enough qualified buyers to keep them, period. Because you got to figure there's probably I'd say on an easy estimate, maybe 10,000 plus mainland rejects being produced in this country, if not more. Because some breeders, you know, they brag about producing 2,000-3,000 themselves, and that's one breeder. I'd probably say less than 2% of those make it to the first year.
Damn.
And that's just shitty to think like, hey, I'm producing a bunch of animals that I know are going to shit homes that are going to die, won't even last a year. Like, why? That's just if you're in it for the money, then I see it. But as someone that actually gives a shit about their animals, that's fucked up. I wouldn't do it. That's why I don't breed mainlands anymore. I have my mainland girl. She'll never go anywhere. She'll stay here forever. And once my facility is built, she's getting a 21 by 7 by 8 walk-in, hopefully with a 500 gallon, like, you know, water feature in there, like it's pond. But I just won't do the mainlands. I love them. And I always have one, as long as hopefully she lives another 20 years. But whenever she's gone, that's it. I'm like, I'll do the super dwarf stuff, but most people get the retics nowadays because, you know, like I said, back then, early 90s, no internet, so no social media, obviously. Most of the people getting those animals that other people considered throwaways, you know, retics, African rocks, anacondas, and they were all pretty nasty. Is because they loved the animals. You know, they were passionate about it. It wasn't dollar signs. It wasn't whatever likes or this on social media or all that bullshit. It's like, I genuinely have a love and passion for this animal and I'm getting it. Oh, it's meaner than shit. It bites me every day. I don't care. I'm still working with it. It's cool. But now you see a lot of people on the retic groups, especially their first posting group. Hey, I'm new, blah, blah, blah. Hey, what's the best investment animal? That totally tells me straight up, like, it's not about passion or they want to learn about the animal. It's dollar signs, you know? Or they get these hatchlings that literally is a hatchling. Oh, it's you know, whatever, 4 months old. What should I breed it to? You fucking raise it up for 5-6 years before you even think about breeding. Like, you know, then and the best is I love it when they say the same thing a couple months later. Oh, it's a 3-month-old, 5, whatever. Oh, I've changed on my breeding projects. Breeding? What the fuck you're talking about? It's 6 months old. What are you breeding it to? It's because you're like, oh, another new shiny thing came up and you're like, I want to switch. There's like no passion. It's like everything is disposable, which is shitty, especially for an animal that big and that intelligent.
Absolutely. No, I concur. And I remember you said that on the Trap Talk when you were on there. And I'm telling you, it was watching that interview you did with MJ was life-changing. I adapted to that big time because that was my first thought process is what am I breeding this to? And it really like shook me into like realizing how invested into the money I got and not into the animals. And that's also why I've switched on my mentality. Like we were talking about backstage, like I don't want to breed, I just want to keep.
Yeah, that's totally cool. Like down the road, honestly, like the more I think about it, a lot of my stuff, like I'm almost to the end of my goals with some projects, like the marble snow clutch that hopefully will be dropping next month. I'm 9 years into it. So I'm hoping I hit marble snows, but the more I look at certain things, I'm like, I'd love to go back from a breeder standpoint and keeper and just have a bunch of kick-ass animals at huge monster displays instead of like, hey, I got to worry about breeding. Like breeding is great and it's fun. And don't get me wrong, it's exciting and shit. Like every time I see them pip or drop eggs or whatever, I love it. It's never gotten boring for me. If it ever did, I'd literally walk away. But yeah, having that perspective of it's okay to keep and not breed, I think is one thing that a lot of people don't understand anymore. Because most people, at least in the retic side of it, they always have this thing where, oh, if I keep it, I have to breed it. Why? No, enjoy it as a pet. If you want to breed it down the road, great. But that's after you've had it for 4 or 5 years, 6 years, you've raised it and decided, hey, that shouldn't be like, hey, I'm going in there, like, I got this hat, and again, what should I breed it to? Nothing. Enjoy it for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years before it goes. I have girls right now that are high percent SC stuff. They're 6 years old. Had no interest in breeding, will absolutely throw a male out of the cage. And they go whenever they go. I'm not like slamming with food, trying to get them to go. It's just one of those things.
Respect. No, that's awesome. That's a mental you just don't hear, at all anymore. Like it's so rare to hear it. Let's go back to this question because this is the second time it comes up. Christina, bear with me here. This is, I'm trying to squeeze your questions in, but it's fluid. Eric, what qualifies a super dwarf versus a dwarf versus a mainland, and how does someone verify that they are getting a good quality super dwarf?
The standards is usually based on size, which can be kind of a gray area because most people, I mean, depending on who you talk to, some people have like length requirements or length standards that, hey, say X feet, like 8 feet to 12 feet, SD 14 and under is dwarf and mainlands, whatever over. I mean, there's so much gray area because I know plenty of people that have mainlands that they've grown them that are proven females at 12 feet, 0 SD blood, dwarf blood, and other SD stuff where, they've gotten bigger and people like, I had a friend that had a pair of 14-foot Kalatoas, but they were like 16 years old. And they're originally, when they first came in the country, whoever had them slammed them with food. So, I mean, there's a lot of gray area in terms of legitimacy. Like I said, you got to do your homework. It's one of those things where there's a lot of solid, SD people out there, Garrett Hardo, Andrew Acevedo, Daniel Solis. I mean, there's a lot. And there's like right now, this upcoming season, there'll be a lot more like Kalatoa stuff because in the last couple of years, like the stuff I've sold, Garrett, Andrew, and others, all those babies are now of age and other people are breeding. You just got to ask and be like, okay, a lot of it, you can tell if the person is like flipping an animal or is actually selling. Because when you start asking basic questions, who produced it? Did you produce it? No. Where'd you get it from? Blah, blah, blah. Stuff like that. That's simple, basic question that if you produce it, you'll know the answer to. If you don't know the answer, it wasn't yours to begin with, which is fine if you bought it from someone, but you have to be able to say, hey, I got it from Eric, or I got it from breeder X. Then I always tell the potential buyer, go independently verify it. If I say I produced it and like you're getting it and accept, and I tell you, hey, the parents are from, person X, you go directly to person X and be like, hey, if you don't mind, did Eric buy such and such an animal? I mean, you don't have to ask about price or anything, just ballpark. Because the thing is, I know some breeders, like if I were to go ask someone to be, hey, did so-and-so buy it? And like, they won't tell you, which they're not being shady. It's just, it's bad business transactions between them two and they don't disclose it, which I kind of understand because that's like none of my business. But in terms of trying to verify, hey, did that animal come from you? And did it go to Eric? I mean, it's kind of, but there's ways to work around it where, okay, you dig further and get as much information before you buy, SD, dwarf, mainland, whatever it is. A lot of it, the legwork falls on the buyer, which is shitty at times if you have a shitty seller. Because most sellers that are legit, they'll tell you everything up front in the ads, this and that, whether it's a pure or it's a cross. They'll be like, hey, this is the parents. This is who I got it from. You can contact so-and-so, and they can verify that, yes, I sold Eric those parents back in 2016 or whatever, But in terms of saying there's a particular size, I don't believe that. I know some people will give like, hey, this animal can get X amount of feet. I've never done that. I think that's the dumbest shit on earth. Just like right now, a lot of people are like, oh, well, SD breeders are picking the smallest animals and holding them back. I don't know how that would work because I pick my holdbacks at about a week after they hatch. So unless you can tell me I have a magic 8-ball that says, hey, this 7-day-old SD is going to be the smallest of the clutch, makes no sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's, it's just one of those things where the people that missed a boat on the SD are going to do whatever it can, spin their shit to make it relevant for the SD side to keep it, which I think is garbage. People are saying, hey, I'm breeding these mainlands and they're saying just as small as SDs is shit, just like other SD breeders that are garbage that, they've posted my 25% SD stuff will stay as small as peers, which is literally the dumbest shit on earth if you had 2 brain cells to think, wait, does that make sense? He's saying he has 25% SDs that will stay smaller than peers. Like, this is common sense, but it's one of those things. It's like that used car salesman tactic. I'm going to say anything I can to make you buy this animal.
I see that.
It's really shit because as the SD market, and the popularity grows, you're going to have legitimate breeders, you'll have questionable breeders, and you'll have down route shitbag breeders. And that's the problem. And you as a buyer have to find your way to and I've told people, I was like, hey, if you want to make a post about me, hey, has anyone bought from Eric? Is he legit? I don't give a shit. I mean, you got to basically, you're protecting your investment, your animal, and hopefully your expectations are met and you're not totally duped and buying some animal that 6 months later, you're like, oh, it's already 6-7 feet,
Yeah, that's I mean, you're on the pages I'm on. So, I mean, I'm sure you see it all the time where it's possible super dwarf or, labeled super dwarf and they have no lineage behind it. They have no information. They don't know who produced the animal.
Yeah, super. Anything like that is complete, suspect to me, because if you're, I don't see why when people like post stuff for sale, they say PM me. Why? Every fucking swinging dick's gonna ask the exact same question. Why don't you just post it up? Why is there a, hey, just PM me and I'll send you, like, why? Everyone looking at the ad's gonna be like, why don't you just post it up, dude? It makes no sense to me.
Because they're trying to sling a super dwarf, or
Yep.
not a super. They're trying to cover up a mainland as a super dwarf to get rid of the poor buy that they made at the expo.
Pretty much.
I don't know if you saw it, but it got flagged. But I saw one of the mainlands that sold at the expo. I watched the sale go down. I watched it come up on the pages as a super dwarf.
No, I don't think I have. Possibly, I don't know. I mean, the thing is, like, it's shitty because like a lot of that stuff happens all the time. And at the end of the day, people send me like screenshots of this or that. I'm like, yeah, it sucks on for both parties or for the buyer, but at the same time, it's like buyer beware for anything, And the thing is, it's like weird to me. Like people they've sent me like messages with their entire story of how they got screwed. And the first red flag is like, you've never met this guy in your life, and all of a sudden he's gonna give you the most screaming deal ever for some dude he doesn't know on a super dwarf, and like it's 50% off. Like that doesn't raise any red flags to you, dude. It's like, yeah, you could get a good deal potentially, but at the end of the day, it's like you know nothing about it, and those impulse buys, whatever, super dwarf, ball python, is just a bad idea, especially with retics.
Agreed. So how do you? I'm sorry. Let me go backwards. I was trying to remember Christina's question and I can't. How do you vet? Let's start with how do you vet a buyer? What are you looking for as the seller?
My big thing is asking questions, like basic questions, like, well, what do you have now? What do you like? What are your plans? And it's one of those things where some fall through the cracks and it's shitty, but at the same time, you'll find a lot of people where I've probably turned away more people than I've sold animals to, because they're like, oh, because it's one of those things, like, unfortunately, with the super dwarf market and the animals, it's not an apples to apples comparison 9 times out of 10. If someone comes to me and be like, hey, I like your whatever 50% SD purple, whatever, and oh, this is the price. Like, holy shit, that's pricey. So and so has it for like half the price. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And they're like, well, is it legitimate? I'm like, it can be. The price isn't like the total giveaway, because like the thing I always tell people, the number, that percentage, whatever it is, 50, 68, 75, is just the numerical value, but that doesn't, include all the information that's relevant, like the lineage, the parents. I have some 50% SD stuff at 2 years old that are smaller than some of the hatchlings that came out that are pure. They're absolutely ridiculously small, but it's because of that individual pairing that I've kept the animals back and this and that, where you got to, do your homework and find out, people always say, it's not, you don't just go by the number, because here's the thing. If like a lot of new people, like, hey, I want a 50% SD, whatever, right? There's a ton of different ways to go about it. I guess I don't want to say it's a standard, but kind of the default where most people think is acceptable is running, a mainland male, whatever, to a pure SD. So all those hatchlings are 50%. The other way you could do it is you run a pure SD male to a mainland girl. Everything's still 50%. Then, there's obviously the combinations in between where each is 50-50, or you get a 25% and 75%. And those genetics of those animals play a big part, because depending on how you get it, it's never been, statistically proven like a pure SD female and a mainland male will produce the smallest animals. That's the assumption that we all make. And I know some SD breeders are like, oh, that's bullshit because you can't, you don't know for sure. That's true. But at the same time, like, let's give an example. Say I have a 6-foot SD male. I have, or no, a 6-foot breeder male mainland that's like a year old, whatever, and say I have an 8-foot female SD girl, and, they produce, they're 50%. That 8-foot female, but it also depends how old is she. Obviously, most first-time breeder animals, whatever they are going to be small because first-time breeders. Whereas if I told you, hey, I have an 8-foot female, she's 12 years old. That's way different than me telling you I have an 8-foot female that's 4 years old. Yeah, technically they're both right, but that 12-year-old animal has shown, hey, it's gonna stay pretty small. Whereas that 4-year-old animal is still barely growing up, is still getting, So it does play a huge part, where the numbers are great and all. It's kind of like a reference point, but how you came about that number is more important than the number itself. Because like I said, like one of the breedings I have, I have a 25% SD girl, and she's about 12 feet. She's not huge, but she's not small, so, and I'm making 50% combos with her because the male 75%. So yeah, they're going to be 50% animals. But when people ask, hey, how big are they going to be? I don't tell a size. I just say, here, the dad's this amount, X amount of feet, mom's this X amount of feet at these ages. Are they done growing? No. Are they still going to grow? Yes. So it's just one of those things you can't really say, hey, it's going to be, this and that. It's just, I can give you an estimate, but at the end of the day, I mean, a lot of things come in factor. A big one is food. Because another big thing I hear lately on the groups is like accuse SD people or me, oh, you've kept your animal small by feeding them. Here's the thing. We've kept all of our animals small by feeding them. Every single reptile keeper has kept keeping their animals to their sizes based on their food intake. Because I don't know of any retic breeder offering 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 food items every time they feed it. Why is it magic number one? People are like, oh, well, you keep it small, then you can sell the animals because you say the parents are small. Yeah, but we all do that. I'm not power feeding the shit where I give them a ton of food or I leave a plate of whatever, mice, rats, whatever you're feeding them, and they get to pick and choose, hey, I'm going to eat 10 of these right now or one, So it's just one of those things where there's a lot of variables and you can't say for sure what something's going to be or, what you can give them an estimate. Hey, these are the parents. If you have the grandparents, great. Then you go off of that. But just giving some, hard, like, hey, this is X amount of fetus can get, which is crazy.
So what is the deepest lineage that you have? Do you have like great grandparents, grandparents, and parents, or
let's see, on my snow stuff is what's that? 1, 2, 3. I'm like 3 generations in on some of the breedings for my snow stuff.
Nice. And so does that give you a better baseline than somebody that doesn't have the lineage backwards then?
It does, in terms of what I can hope for, or what I kind of like, a rough estimate what I'm thinking the adults are going to be. That and some of my initial SD, like the het snow and double het snow stuff. Like, I'm a firm believer in keeping a shitload of holdbacks, not because I'm going to use them all, but just for variety and the sake of, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot and sell something too soon and be like, I literally just sold myself out of my own project. So like one of my first big breedings was my 75% SD purple snow to my 62.5% marble platinum het Andy. So they're, marble het or double het snow, depending on the combos of the babies. I kept 12 of the babies back as holdbacks. So I have 12, holdbacks from that clutch that are almost 3 years old now. And they're in a 5 to 7 foot range. And like I said, mom's 14 feet. She's a big snake. She's not small, even though she's 62%. But I tell people, hey, I have 12 babies from her first breeding ever that are almost 3 years old. These are the size ranges. Did I power feed them? No. Why? Because I don't think it's necessary. I'm absolutely positive they could have been bigger if I slammed them with food. But here's my thing. Why? It doesn't benefit me. It doesn't benefit the snakes. I know some people believe like you have to feed the ever living shit out of a snake to find out if it'll stay small and just get fat. Then you can call it super dwarf, which again makes no logic to me. I was like, and people say like, oh, well, you're not feeding enough to know it could get bigger. Of course it can. But at the end of the day, like, why? Is it going to help his health? No. Yeah, it can prove it'll get bigger. Yeah, but just like if I decided I want to eat nonstop every day for the next 6 months, of course I'm going to get heavier. What's that going to prove? It's just one of those things. I don't think it's necessary. Yeah, like I said, and I think the big push now too is like, if you follow it, the SD community is really big on getting, like I said, bigger enclosures, like more elaborate, taller, more vertical space for climbing. So yeah, I control my animals, size by their food intake, but I guarantee you once they start exercising more because they have a 3 foot tall enclosure, you're cruising around, they'll get hungrier. I feed them more, they'll get bigger, And I don't care because I'm not afraid of, oh, well, they're not small anymore. I mean, they're going to grow to whatever they grow to. And I'm sure once they get even more exercise, they'll probably grow even bigger, which I'm totally cool with.
Respect. And I think that's a mental, like every community's adapting at that point. It's like bigger enclosures, better husbandry, taking care of our animals. Like
a lot of the keepers in Europe, their mentality is way different. Like ours, like they look at us as all forwards and horrible keepers because we keep them in like sterile paper, paper liner, hide, maybe no hide, whatever, in a dog bowl. Whereas all their stuff is super elaborate and they all look like zoo exhibits and displays, which is kick ass. And I think it'd be fantastic if the SD community did the same thing in the future, where they're going more toward that and just getting away from, like I said, the vision cages are functional, to grow out animals, this and that. But even their biggest cages are way too small, even for an SD, because they don't have the depth or the height, in my opinion.
Respect. Now it's something Earl's been touching on. We touched on it. A lot of people are starting to really push on that, and I think it's been a necessary wave that we've needed for many years now to really start pushing on the bigger enclosures.
Absolutely.
Husbandry. Replicate the wild as closely as possible. Give them a natural habitat so we're not freaking them out. Makes keeping wild caughts way easier to mimic the wild. The behaviors are way different. Hold on. Let's there's a handful of questions in the comments I'm about to hit you with. Get ready.
Cool. They're asking a lot of questions right now. And me, I'm just learning. It's like,
Eric, you hit high percentage super snows super early in the game. How did you do it?
I bought a pair January 2011, 75% Kalatoa, 12.5% Jamps that were from Ben Rennick. He got that pair originally from, I think it was Michael Powell and Corey Browning. Corey Browning, I believe, is out of Canada. This was right at the cusp of them figuring out what Andrew was. Back then, they didn't really know what it was. They called it like pastel. So Powell and Browning did the breeding. Rennick got some of those animals. I got a pair off of him. And the pair I got is the same clutch mates to the ones that Richard Bilbo have. And my first breeding, and I said, like, back then, it was about slamming animals, getting them big. And I had that pair, and they bred in the boa tub. I think it's like 3 foot by 3 foot. So it's not big at all. I bred them there. And actually, no, I'm trying to think. Shit, that's the wrong pair. No, that's the right pair. So I bred them in there, and I got 8 eggs. Out of 8 eggs, I hit on 1 double hit, and it was a snow. And thank God it was a male. Pretty much that male set the course for everything else I've done up to this point. Because, like I said, I've known people that bred animals and hit 100-some babies and never hit on the male snow. They hit the female snows, but, obviously the male, you can use way faster than the female. So it's just one of those things. I got that male, and I got a wild-caught Kalatoa back in, I don't know, let's see here, 2013-ish. She was tiny. So I got that 75% purple snow male, and he was legitimately probably as big around as my pinky on wrap-ups. And I got him to go, and I bred him and that wild-caught Kalatoa in a V70 tub. I only got 2 good eggs out of it. But again, it's just one of those things where you have those, chance breedings that, the odd gods are in your favor. You get a male or female, whatever you need, and you hit it. And I hit it, and pretty much I've never looked back since. Because the time I had my male, I think I had that male maybe 3 or 4 years before anyone else. No, 2 or 3 years before I think anyone else had a male, like at 75% SD, which just set me way ahead of everyone else. Because at that point, eventually I ran into that marble platinum and just, took off from there.
Nice. That's incredible. It's funny how the odds gods play favors in certain situations.
Yep.
So I'm going to catch up on the questions. Eric, we talk about this all the time, but how far in advance do you plan your breedings?
I have the ones I'm doing for this year. I planned out usually about a year in advance, and I have a bunch of contingencies. Like I have a list I do of all my animals and like what's ready to go, what I want to do, what I shoot on. And the thing is, like, I don't know, the people that I talk to probably realize it, and I've told them, is like, I only do breedings once. Other than making pures, I've never went back and doubled up on any of my SD cross breedings, because I won't. Because like the way I look at it, like say you buy whatever morph combo I sell it to, say I sell it to you for $5,000 for that particular breeding, and say you buy a female. If I'm doing that same breeding, let's say another 2-3 years in a row, before your girl is even of age to do anything for you, like the value of your animal, not that it went down substantially, but for people that would have got a comparable male, like you're still 2-3 years behind the game when those guys are already going to be breeding before you do. It basically screws you, for you spending that kind of money, and me just, not that it's tanking the market or it's killing the project, but it's hurting my customers if I were to like continually like do the same, breeding over and over and over again. Like I do stuff once, I hope I get what I want, obviously, but if I don't, I make it work, and I go on, like everything's stepping stones for me. So it's one of those things where I say they're usually a year out, but obviously in my head, I have things where this is what I want to breed in 2 years, 3 years. I have a long-term, short-term, or long-term, midterm, and short-term, midterm, and long-term goals, anything in the next year or two, then 3 to 5, then 8 to 10, and stuff like that. And then everything changes after each breeding year where, hey, I hit on the combo I want, or I don't, but let's see how I can adjust and make it work.
Nice. Respect. Yeah, that's I don't feel like that's a mental that you hear a lot, is the short, the mid, and the long. You hear the long or you hear the short. There is no mid or,
Yeah.
Contingency if something happens. Hold on. Let's see. All right. I think I'm caught. Oh, no. Oh, sorry. Yep. I think I'm caught up. Eric, the desire for bigger and more enriched enclosures, is that why you have been letting some of your snakes go?
I've always wanted the bigger enclosures from day one. I just back when I was in Arizona and got into the SC stuff, I'm in an apartment. I'm not doing any, and now I with a house with the wife and with my new conversion down the road when I get it done, it's not necessarily that I want to get rid of the animals because, I want, bigger enclosures. I've always wanted bigger enclosures. I want less animals just to have less animals, less is more. And the way I look at it, it'll be a lot of work because my ultimate goal is to go bioactive in everything I do. Obviously mine is hatchlings because hatchlings are hatchlings. I would keep in hatchling racks. But any of the breeder stuff, the goal is to have a minimum for the breeder males are going to be 5.5 by 3, I think 16-inch, which to me is still small, but obviously I'm limited by space. The breeder females are going to be in 6 by 3 by 30s, and the bigger girls will be in 8 by 3 by 30s, which for a 9-10 foot snake is huge compared to what most people do for them. So it's just, yeah. And the thing is, right now I have about 80 retakes, give or take, maybe a little more. I'm about 50, 70 hours a week into it just because I clean like crazy. I don't do that thing where, hey, I only clean once a week. I do my big cleanings, obviously after a few days after feeding, but I'll spot clean and go in there, take animals out and handle them and all that stuff. And I'm in that room cleaning every single day. So I'm cutting back just because it's easy. The way I look at it is I tell people same things. If you're buying say investment quality male, say you have 6 males right now, or say 3 males, you're going to spend big money. Say you spend 10, 15 grand on that super high investment quality male. That male could negate all your other ones. So you go from 4 cages down to 1 now. So it's not that you don't want the other animals and you're just kind of cut back. It's you're streamlining the process because that male is not going to be good for you just for 1 season. That male is going to be good for you for 4 or 5 years, is you streamline the process. Even same thing with ball pythons where you could have some crazy, I don't know how many genes you have the ball pythons, but say you have a 6-gene male, you can do your clown combos, pies or whatever, and use them. The other stuff, yeah, you're gonna make pos heads, but you don't need to do 1-for-1. My big, not a mistake, but a thing I did initially when I got into retakes, everything I do is 1-to-1, meaning my breedings, I have 1 girl, I have 1 male for her, and that's it. And if that say it doesn't go, I just hold on to them until they breed, blah, blah, blah. But most retake people, when you tell them I got 20 some males, they're like, what the hell do you mean you got 20 some males? Oh, I got 20 breeder males. I have friends that have 40 some females. They have 2, 3 males and that's it. And they're like, your shit someone's 1-to-1. I'm like, yeah. They're like, why? I'm like, because the way I look at it, I don't shotgun approach anything. I never back up females with any other male. That breeding is either going to happen or it's not. And I'm not just going to randomly throw some male and be like, oh, I just want some eggs. I don't give a shit what it is. When I see people, hey, I ran 3 different males to that female. Okay, so you don't give a fuck about the breeding then, because there's no way you're telling me that's selectively breeding when you're running 3 or 4 different males to 1 female, and that you can be able to differentiate if you have a split clutch or whatever you get. All my stuff's 1-to-1, and hopefully they go, and if they don't, they don't. But that's why right now for my high percent stuff, a lot of it is all mega multi-gene stuff, and I actually plan on doing higher percent stuff for that reason where, like I said, right now, I have probably 18 males, which I don't need 18 males. But again, when I do the 1-to-1 stuff or this or that, is because everything's selectively going for one reason. Where, say I have a mega gene male, if I'm just running it to a period to make just high percent, stuff that I can sell, that's kind of my bread and butter for, and I can focus on the niche stuff and have those 1-to-1, male and female pairings, and I'm fine.
Nice. Okay. That's awesome. Wow. Like I said, man, we're fans just taking all this in. That's incredible. You know what? I'm going to let Marvin have this one because this will lead into my next big thing. With as much time as you spend in your snake room, where do you find time to train for these ultras?
Don't sleep.
I
This thing is getting older. Like when I was in AZ, like I was running year round out there. I did ultras in June and July and August and damn near died in them, but they're fun as shit. I don't know. The snake thing keeps me busy nonstop, but you know, you got like I work from home, so like you go stir crazy if you never leave the house. So yeah, I just got to force myself and I'll go do these crazy ass like 20, 30, 40-mile runs. And I'll come back totally smoked and basically crippled, but I still get in the snake room because honestly, at the end of the day, it's like, you know, this is my honor to keep those snakes and to keep them in shitty conditions. It just annoys the hell out of me, and you know, it makes me feel like an asshole. Like people are like, well, you know, how much do you spend on your paper? I'm like, because I use like the Bounty paper towels for the Hatchling Rex, and that shit's not cheap. And I think Costco is what, $20 or something like that for that big packet of whatever. And I'm going
like 16,
like probably 2 or 3 packets in a month, and I don't have that many hatchlings. They're like, why? I'm like, I clean the hatchling rack out 2-3 times a week. And they're like, why? I'm like, oh, I piss. Well, you don't wait until it shits? No, it's rude. Like, yeah, it's just piss, but do you want to sit in a nasty piss-soaked, you know, liner, or do you want, you know? So every morning, go in there, check everything, spot clean every single cage. Whenever, you know, if something's dirty, I clean it. And the same thing with the paper. Like I run like the contractor's paper for the vision cages. Could I let it go a little bit longer? Yeah, but I don't. Same thing. I just, you know, I don't want it sitting in nasty, you know, not that it's soaked or anything, but it's just there's still poop or urates or this or that. Take them out, let them cruise around, roam, and just, you know, I just think it's really like, you can see like people that post videos of their enclosure, the ones that actually take pride in it, where like the cages aren't, your room's never gonna be spotless because for retics, they piss like 5 times more than they shit. So it's always gonna have some cages to be dirty. But then you see other people posting that shit looks like they haven't cleaned it in fucking weeks. That's disgusting. Like, first of all, like I'm OCD about the cleanliness of it. The having the, you know, the animals in my house, like I can smell that shit outside. Like the big girl I have, like I said, she's like 17 feet. Outside my front door, when she takes a piss or shit, I can smell it from outside. I'm like, people are like, oh, well, I'm like, yeah, I don't like, there's times where I'm in bed and I'm like, what the fuck is that smell? My wife's asleep and she's like, what are you doing? You smell that? She's like, no. I'm like, oh, I think she took a shit. And I'm like, okay, I'm going downstairs and changing. It's like, what are you doing? Cleaning? Why? Because I can literally smell it. To me, that's just nasty as shit. And retic piss is super high in ammonia to me. So I'm like, I can definitely smell it. I'm not going to be like, oh, she's cool and sit in it for a few hours. I mean, if I'm busy, that's one thing. But if I have the free time, I'm going to take care of it.
Absolutely. No, my mainland, she's not big yet, but man, when she pisses, you can smell it.
Yeah.
It stands out. Colubrids, I would say, are like a close second to retics, and that's the only thing I can think of that smells as damn bad as when they piss.
The only other thing worse on the retic piss is like some of my, like I have another girl that she takes pigs, and the pig piss is the piss from the pigs is way different than the piss from the rabbit, in my opinion.
I'm like, oh.
Interesting. I'll have to see about that as mine gets bigger because I'll go through the stages too. I'll be texting you. I'm like, where was I going with that? Oh yeah, fitness. So you're a big fitness guy. Like, I mean, it's like Marvin mentioned, you run fucking ultras. Like, hats off. Incredible what you do. Does any mentality that you take from fitness apply to the animals?
Oh yeah.
And how do the two coexist together?
Absolutely, because I mean, honestly, anyone that has a big collection, you know, we've all been burnt out. There's not a person alive that I've talked to that hasn't been burnt out at some time where they're like, I want to sell everything. I'm just like, I don't want to spend 12 hours of cleaning fucking cages. Or my biggest thing is I always, you know, joke with my wife. I want to get, you know, big enough and rich enough where I never clean a water bowl. I just keep throwing them away and buying fucking new ones. I absolutely hate cleaning water bowls, you know. So I use those 4-inch like PVC end caps from Home Depot for the hatchling racks. And scrubbing like 80 of those sitting there, just, you know, just actually just the worst, you know. But that whole mental, you know, wall you hit, you know, sometimes where you're just down and out, say your key breeding for the year doesn't go, or something dies, or just, you know, I mean, there's no guarantees. We're living, breathing animals, and sometimes they'll literally drop dead for no reason. You get the necropsy, no explanation. Then you're left with a bunch of like what ifs, like what the hell did I do wrong? Sometimes you didn't do shit. They just die, you know, and it sucks. But it's a fact of life, you know. There's no guarantees in this. So with the ultras, like I've ran plenty of ultras that I DNF didn't finish because I crashed and burned. or I just punked out, I got 40 miles left, can't do it, or drop out, or don't make the time hacks. It's just, I love the ultras because, I mean, right now in my life, there's not a lot of things that can push me where you get to your breaking point. Because, we all do things where, we get pushed, 8 hours of this, 10 hours of that. But when you change it to 20 hours, 24 hours, 30 hours or whatever, that's different. Just that wall you hit is crazy. Like this past week, I just came off of my first ever, I did 5-day fast, had nothing to eat, just drank plain ass water for 5 days. And I thought my ass was going to die. I mean, so it's just one of those things where I'm always trying to push myself, just be like, I need to hit those new mental blocks, It's something to do on the, on the in-between times of the reptiles. The reptile is great, don't get me wrong. But honestly, in my opinion, you need something outside of that. Otherwise, like, you're not going to get, you're not going to be happy, in my opinion. I mean, great if you are, but I know I can't just be happy doing strictly reptiles and nothing else. Like, I've always tried to stay in shape, the military life and just being active and going out and doing stuff. It's always been part of what I do. So the ultras is one of those things where it focuses, because it gets me in gear where, hey, I need to clean all these cages, everything absolutely, tip top for the next 2 weeks, because I got to start training for whatever race I have coming up. Or, hey, as soon as I get back from this race, I got to grind it out for, I've come back from races, like usually the races on the weekend. So I'll come back on a Monday or whatever, Sunday night, and I'll grind out, 40, 50, 60 hours in that room and not sleep, get that whole room clean, just so I can start the process. By the time I finished it, someone's already, pissing or shitting somewhere and start over the following week. So just one of those things.
It's incredible, man. That's insanity. 50 to 60 hours after
Yeah. There's times I'm in there and my wife will come down and like I've been limping because when I don't know about other people, when I run the ultras, just be all pressure on my feet, all my toenails fall off. They all die, they fall off and shit. So so like she'll be like, dude, you're limping. What are you doing there? Go to bed, go rest. I'm like, no, I gotta clean this. How long? Oh, just like 8 hours. And she'll look at me like I'm crazy. But like I said, it's an honor and pleasure to keep these animals, and I want to keep them as clean as I can because, down the road, once I get those big ass elaborate enclosures, same thing. I'm gonna do my best to keep that shit just, tip top as long as I can, all the time.
Nice. That's
I know what you're talking about too, with the nails falling off and everything. Because I play football and then I have ADHD. I'm always moving.
So that on your toes, they whack and die, and sometimes you gotta drain that shit before. Yeah.
the fuck, man.
It's painful. Yeah, it's painful.
Yeah, it's fuck that, dude. I've lost toenails in not athletic situations, so fuck that. Why did you fast for 5 days straight? What the hell possessed you to do that? I have to know.
That's like this past year, because of the whole the new reticket room I was getting built. I'm probably out like $80,000 because I got totally hosed by the contractor. So it's been a shit year for that part of it. So I mean, snake wise, everything was fantastic, but just that looming over my head, I'm just like, I just need something I need a big, giant, physical, mental push to pull my head out of my ass and just be like, fuck it, it is what it is, and just drive on. Because things happen in our life, and sometimes like you want that pity party. I'm just like, I don't got time for that shit. I got so much fucking work to do. I need to get over it, put it behind me, and just like right now it's out of my hands. So why am I even worrying about it? So, and I told my wife like last year, like in December, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna try this thing where I just don't eat for a few days. She's like, how long? 2 or 3? I'm like, oh, let's see, 5. 5 seems reasonable. She's like, what are you gonna do? You can do like liquids? I'm like, just water. No broth? No, just water. We'll see what happens. Oh, and I want to try to run 100 miles. And she's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, I'm gonna try to run 100 miles in that 5 days and not fucking eat anything. So I was like, okay. So last week, like Monday, I started it. I go run 20 miles, and I haven't ran in like 2 weeks. I'm like probably almost, I don't know, like 6-7 pounds over what I usually am. So like I did the 20-mile run. That fucking wrecked me. I'm like, holy shit, I'm out of shape. I come back, and then I go work out for 2 hours at the gym, do that. Next day, I'm like limping. I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, dude, I can't run. So I go to the gym. I do 5 miles on the treadmill, work out again. And then I'm just like, that whole lack of food started kicking in like on Wednesday, day 3, where my brain was fucking mush. And I was just like, I just got to force through it. And literally, got to the point where I realized I can only do one big thing a day from like Wednesday and Thursday. So I just like, you know what, I'm gonna clean cages. I go to the gym for my normal 2 hours, but normally my gym warm up is about I don't know, half hour worth of stuff I do, like bike, then pull-ups, dips, sit-ups and stuff like that. That ended up being my workout because I just mentally, like, it took me like almost hour and a half, 2 hours to do my normal half hour, 45-minute warm-up. I was like, holy shit. And by like Friday, I was so weak, like I was curling 25 pounds and I almost had to swing that shit. It was embarrassing. I was on a seated bench. I'm like, I'm like,
Yeah.
this shit's 25 pounds. So I'm looking around like, God damn, this is embarrassing. But I was like, you know what? By Wednesday night, I had some major, just massive headaches, which at first I thought was just food withdrawal, just being starving. But then I started realizing, I was like, I drink caffeine like that shit's going out of style. Like probably a fucking horse. And going cold turkey on caffeine, I've done it before. You get these crazy headaches, it's super irritable and stuff. And I realized, I was like, those crazy headaches, I was like, it's probably more caffeine withdrawal than it was food. But by Thursday, I was like, okay, it's not bad. But by like Friday morning and all Friday, I was like on Instagram and fucking YouTube looking at all these food stuff. Wife comes home looking from work and I'm watching all these food cooking things on Netflix. She's like, what are you fucking doing? I'm like, oh, I'd fucking kill everyone right now to eat some of that right now. She's like, dude, what the hell? I'm like, she's like, why are you torturing yourself? I don't know, because I'm stupid. But today it's like, it's nice to push yourself out of your comfort zone because we all get comfortable, and about being comfortable, we get lazy. Like, oh, I don't want to be uncomfortable for this or that. You're just like, no, you got to push yourself, do some new crazy shit. Then that's like your new benchmark. Like I already told my wife, in the future, I've already have plans. Like I want to do maybe a 7-day or longer fast, and I think I have a better layout because I ended up only doing like almost 30 miles, which ain't shit for a run week. But like, yeah, I want to do maybe 7 miles and kind of plan it out more instead of just balls out 20 miles the first day. That wrecked me, but
God damn.
I'm just like, damn.
Yeah,
I
that's
take a lot of caffeine too. I take a lot of pre-workout as well. So
like right now, like usually like 6 to 12 cups of coffee and back by like 2 to 4 cans of Red Bull a day. So I mean, when I was in Arizona, it was worse because like I used to go run out and like out in McDowell like in the summertime, and like there's one time I almost died because I passed out on the trail twice. It was I remember because I took a screenshot. I started the run at 104 degrees and I hadn't run for like fucking I don't know like 6 weeks. I tried to do like my normal 18-mile loop. I found a new like antenna array off of like the main one in Pemberton. That's another like 9 miles. I was like, turns out to be like 27 miles. I ran out of water, passed out on the trail. I called my wife, and this is when I was still living in Mesa. I'm like, hey babe, I think I might die today. She's like, why? I just woke up. She's like, from where? Under a mesquite bush up on this trail. She's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, I must have passed out when I was running. And I ran. Hey, call me in a couple hours. If I don't answer you, I'm probably dead. I run. Then I literally passed out again. I call my friend, and he's like, I tell him what's up. I'm like, hey, I haven't, I was like, it's 100+ degrees. I stopped sweating hours ago. I haven't had water in hours. Like, how bad is it? Like, oh, your body's probably shutting down. If you pass out again, you're going to die. He's like, how many more miles do you have? I was like, I don't know. I got like 4 or 5 more miles. Like, you better make it. He's like, if I don't talk to you tomorrow, it's been good knowing you. I'm like, thanks. And just luckily back. But it's just those things where, back then, like all the rangers that worked at the park, in the summertime, June, July, August, I'm the only car in that whole parking lot. People like, you go in, you got to pay the entry, whatever you get in the park. They're like, hey, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm going to go run 20 miles. And the old people at the, gates are like, what do you mean you're running? It's like 100-some degrees. Oh, I know. Have a nice day. And they look at me like I'm a goddamn weirdo.
I'm just like, man, that's wild.
But
that's fucking crazy, man. I live out here and dude, I can't walk while I'm herping for a long period of time, let alone fucking run.
No, I've told people because like it's weird because I found my first ever porcupine out there at McDowell. I didn't even know they're out there. And people are like, what do you mean? And I found all kinds of crazy shit because back then I was getting about 2,000 to almost about 2,500 miles a year running. So I mean, you find a lot of shit when you run 2,500 miles in trails that most like you said, most herpers, you get out of your car, you find it, you get back in your car. You're not walking miles into some desolate ass place where like you're not doing that. So people are like, you found what and what? I'm like, where were you? Well, it's a 15-mile run into. They're like, wait, you can't drive to it? No. They're like, okay, never mind.
No, I'm not in shape by any way, shape, or form, but I will say that fucking road cruising is cheating. Like that's such bullshit.
But I mean, it's cheating, but at the same time, like you just you won't cover that ground. And if you want the variety, because especially in Arizona, there's a ton of great shit, but everything's like, okay, this spot is for this spot is for this. So it's one of those things where it's kind of that compromise where if you want to go out one night and find a bunch of different stuff, like, for the most part, you won't find it in the same area. If you want to find tigers or blacktails or this or that, like, you're going to different areas for it.
Yeah, for sure. Like, driving spot to spot is okay in my opinion, but like, I went out with a buddy and we were like literally road cruising. It was cool. We found 20 something rattlesnakes that night, but it wasn't as satisfying as going out on foot. Like, we found 20 that night, but the night that I found like a handful of snakes walking for miles, there was way more satisfaction than that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I had to fucking work for that shit, man. That's fucking incredible though. 2,500 miles.
Yeah, I was averaging about 2,000 to 2,500 miles a year. I think my high year was almost 3,000.
So outside of the porcupine, what was the coolest reptile that you found while you were out running?
My favorite, it always has been, is just the tortoises. I mean, they're not super rare, but they're so cool. And I love the fact they ain't running away from me. Don't worry about you. If I'm right there, I can do all the pics I want. You're not going anywhere. It's just one of the coolest ones ever, though. I found a hatchling that was probably, I don't know, maybe that big, hatching desert next to an adult, and the adult was like 5 feet away. So I was like, holy shit. I was like the whole time I was paying attention to the hatchling that was right next to this boulder. Then like literally I'm like, I take pics. It wasn't moving. It was just like all hunkered down. And I look, I see this adult like 5 feet. I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, that's the coolest thing ever. But it's weird. Like a lot of things, like, I found stuff where, like that running trail I did at McDowell out in Fountain Hills, that was predominantly where I ran. So I'm running damn near 2,000 miles a year there. Like the last couple of years, I found stuff I've never found there. Just, I don't know if I didn't like and the funny thing is I'd always find stuff when I was all gassed out and all pissed off that my run was shit. I'd always tell my wife like, oh, this run is shit. But then all of a sudden I started finding horny toads. I found, the ground snakes and this crazy stuff where there's times where like on the same trails, like I almost stepped on a hatchling desert tortoise. And the only reason I did it, the same thing, I gassed out and it was sucking ass run. And I just, walking, I looked down, like, holy shit, slow hatchling tortoise. I was like, thank God I'm sucking ass. Because if I was running, I would have felt like the total asshole if I squished a little hatchling tortoise. So everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible, man. Wow. I don't think I've ever heard that before, finding a hatchling tortoise out in the wild. Like, that's, wow, incredible.
I'm just like, man, he's blowing my mind, just like running on nothing.
No, I've done runs where on purpose, like I make it horrible as possible, and people are like, why? So at the end of the day, it's like I just want to push myself. We get so comfortable in our lives, and like my life here, even in Arizona, is the same. I had my bubble. Like back then, all the snakes, my gym life, then my trail running, but like I never step out of that. And that should get stagnant. I don't know about you, but mentally, me, I'm like, I need to fucking change. So I'll start like, oh, my normal run, okay. Now let's do it where I don't eat, or let's do it when it's fucking balls hot and like, at noon or, and people are like, that's horrible. I'm like, yeah, it absolutely is. But if I can do it now, then when the conditions are great, then I have, just zero issues with it. So,
yeah.
And that's like that. I just want to push myself because like I said, I want to see how far I can take it. I'm going to ride this thing until the fucking wheels fall off. That's all it is.
Man, mad respect, man. Mad respect.
That's awesome. And then, I mean, it's crazy to think about because you have the opposite mental with the animals. Like you're out here trying to kill your damn self doing something crazy to ride it till the wheels fall off. And then you're limiting yourself on the animals and showing them respect and not wanting to overdo things.
Yeah. I mean, I've had, like I said, I'm 44 years old right now. I've done the reptile, other than that 8-year block when I was active duty, I've always had animals. And, back pre-internet, pre-social media, it was like what you said, where you're keeping for the enjoyment of it. And that back then we had everything. Like reptile shows back then was a freak show of not just for the animals, it's for the people. All the people were fucking weirdos back then, We're now super mainstream, which is cool. But back then, like you got some animal, then you'd literally go and be like, okay, I got to go to the library and look in the fucking card, the card catalog and find out what the hell I got, how to keep it. I mean, don't get me wrong, most of that information is totally obsolete. But now it's like everything's at your fingertips and people just want to be spoon-fed all that shit. Like, yo, go, like, do some research and figure it out. Like, I like the groups are great, but like literally everyone, I'd say pretty much everyone has a smartphone. You can find out everything. I mean, is the information always right? No, but that's why you bet it against the groups or against people. But just going to the groups like, I know nothing. Give me everything I need to know. Like, that's not how life works, at least not in my opinion. Like, any real value of anything, you're going to sacrifice for it, period.
No, respect. That's a bigger mental I've had. And I see it a lot in the groups too, where people post and they're like, oh, well, I either got this and I need all the information, or I need all the information because I want this. And it's like, the groups are, with all due respect, great sometimes, but more often than not, they're full of shit.
Yeah, like lately,
especially on Facebook.
I just post on my Instagram account because I'm not on Facebook as much because it's super clicky, and people like all these people that they've had it for a month. I'm an expert now. That's fucking great. Then why are you here asking questions? I'm like, I don't mind helping people at all. Like I won't not answer someone that sends me a message. But at the end of the day, it's like people are giving you legitimate, advice when you ask for it. Then you're like, no, that's not right. I heard so and so. Like, why the fuck are you asking? Simply, like if you don't want to listen to it, that's fine. Just don't ask.
Yeah, and so something I've noticed too is like knowing who you're talking to too, like the history of the hobby is a big thing for me. Understanding the lineage of the keeper, because I've seen it a lot where there are some really big names in some of the boa groups, and I've seen the newbies come in and talk to them like they're nobody, and it's like like I not just like from a respect level, but like you want to get into this. That person's the reason you have that snake, and you should know that because you're doing your research on the animal and how to keep them and be better than we were 20 years ago. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all about evolution.
My big thing is like I'm not the guy that wants to be right. Like at the end of the day, like I want to basically bring this hobby farther than whatever it was when I got into it. So down the road, and other people can do far surpass whatever I do. Not even on the breeding end of it, on the husbandry end. The genetics is what it is. They're like, yeah, it'll evolve as time comes, but the husbandry, like right now, is leaps and bounds of what we've done even 5 years ago. Like this whole huge push where like people are putting their SC stuff like in 3 and 4 foot tall enclosures, where before people like you can keep them in these super shallow cages and just a dodgeball paper shit. So that whole push toward that is fantastic in my opinion. That's what we need.
Absolutely.
Have the old schoolers off, but fuck them. At the end of the day, at their time, now it's for the new generation. I'm not saying I'm part of the new generation, but if I can, pave the way for the next people coming up, behind me, great. And that's all this is, because at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, how are you going to leave your mark in the reptile community if you're actually passionate about it? It's not about you being, the grand poobah, you're fucking the greatest, because what I'm saying now, 5 years from now, might be totally obsolete or totally asinine, where they're like, oh, Eric is full of shit. He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. And if it is, it is. I mean, so be it. But for now, like, we need that push where we get that whole old school mentality of small, tiny, like that shit don't work. I mean, it works to a point, but I mean, the animals, like I said, they're surviving, but they're not thriving.
Amen. Agreed. So with the new mental, the new push and everything, you touched on the first Lacey Act. We just fought off the second. What are your thoughts of US ARC?
No, we absolutely need them. People always bitch and complain about US ARC, but at the end of the day, it's a grassroots program. Like, wherever, I'm not even sure where their main, headquarters is, but like when all these local laws come out in whatever your town, your, different states, like the people that live there have the most impact when they're writing whatever their letters and their correspondence to their, their congressman. Me writing some letter to some dude in Maine or whatever, they're gonna be like, this dude lives in California. What the hell do I care? Whereas I'm not one of his constituents. Like if you're not being active with that, then at the end of the day, when something happens, you can't bitch and complain and say, oh, US ARC didn't do anything. Yeah, they're doing the best they can, but they need the people that those congressmen or whoever local representatives that represent actually live in their, area, have the most influence and power over them, not us. I mean, yeah, we're all going to help and do our part, donate this and that. But if all the people in that area being affected directly by that law, legislation, whatever it is, not doing anything, we can't do shit about it.
Respect. So what do you think we could do to further help US ARC?
The big thing is just getting out there and reaching non-reptile people. Because, like, people are like, oh, you got to spread the message. The thing is, we're not. If you're talking to other reptile people, that doesn't do anything, because the way I see it, the main issue we have with legislation, bans, and this and that, it's not because of other reptile people saying, hey, we don't like retics, we don't like ball pythons. It's outsiders looking in. And when we as a whole look like shit to outsiders, they're the ones that have the money, that have the power, that have no knowledge of reptiles for the most part. Those are the people. Like, I do as many as I can presentations with my snakes at my wife's school. So I brought that big super son to her school, presentations, Zoom with the whole pandemic when that was a thing. So it's like and it's just outreach in terms of, you got to grow the community. And I'm not talking about having reptile keepers like get other types of animals. I'm talking about the next generation kids. We're not going to have any kind of reptile industry or community if the kids don't give a shit about it in the future. So you're raising up the next generation to be like, oh, that lizard, snake, whatever it is, it's super cool. I want to learn about it. I want to keep it. That's how you're going to grow the industry and the community down the road, is by incorporating non-reptile people into your collections, bring them to your house, or go to parties, or do stuff, where it's kind of like, people like, why don't you just bring your animals out in the public without in a uncontrolled setting, like just random. Like, I won't do that, because there's people that are legitimately terrified of snakes. I don't want to bring any snake, small or big, and give some old lady or old dude a heart attack because he saw something unprepared. Like, to me, that's a dick move. It's one thing if you're like, hey, at school or at this park, it's a known, like, legitimate presentation or educational thing. Whereas I just throw my snake on the grass at the park and let it cruise, and it's like a shock value. I think that's just fucking stupid.
Respect. No, absolutely. I back that 110%. That's, like Earl was talking about last night, doing things that are smart for the hobby, and that's just it's not smart. It's not thought out, and it's
stock
never works.
They want the looks and ahs, and it's stupid because you're hurting the community.
Yeah, it's like the bite videos and live feeding videos and the shit that continues to hurt us. It's not worth it. Yeah, the shock factor is great for views and attention, but it's not the right kind of attention. There's another question in the comments. What's your most anticipated project?
Probably right now, like my marble snow is one of my big ones this year, because like I said, if I hit on it, I've been working on it for 9 years. I could have hit on it probably 2.5 years ago, but they would have been a lower percent and wouldn't have been the ideal pairing I wanted, which is why I waited. And even that other lower percentage would have been way more genes involved. I don't give a shit about it. Like, all my stuff, like I said, I've been waiting for this pairing since I hatched that double het snow girl like 6 years ago. And from that point, I already knew, like, hey, you're going to go to whatever male I make. And by the time, hopefully, like I said, she's 6 years old. It's never bred. 4 years old didn't. 5 years old didn't. She's a little over 6 now. She was 6 in July. But it's just one of those things where whenever they go, I just, and she finally went, and that's a huge one for me. Another one is my rainbow project. I got a rainbow not too long ago that I started incorporating into my stuff, and I have a clutch that's due next month from a rainbow to a purple GC snow, and he's pos het into caramel. So potentially, if he proves out, it'll open me up to having orange glow snows and Indo caramel snows in the future. Because currently the only snows I work with are purple, the purple Clark Lion albinos.
Yeah, that's fire.
Yeah, that's incredible. So, off the wall question here: How long do you think it will be until we see ocelots involved in the Super Dwarf project?
Well, right now, like, if mine go, well, here's the thing: rainbow, ocelot, and I forgot the other name. They're all the same thing, depending on the breeder. So the rainbow has it's an ocelot, so those would be 31% Kalatoa, so low percent. But like I said, these will be triple hets. Worst case scenario, if he doesn't prove out, which I don't care, they're triple hets. I'll have them on ground, so down the road, eventually I'll have rainbow snows or ocelot snows, whatever you want to call them. And I know Garrett Hardo has an ocelot project he's working on, and some other people are working on ocelot stuff too. So I mean, having them like, how should I phrase this? Reasonably priced is, you're looking at in the SD, like say 50%, you're probably still 5 years out, give or take, roughly. I mean, I'm sure you might have some people that have stuff this year, but they're going to be hets, and they're going to be way more than just your average, entry level snake. So
nice. Okay. So what is a newcomer into the Super Dwarf community? looking at price wise to get involved in just a regular super door project. Let's say we're going to not use morphs, but they just want to get involved. They want to help, eliminate the mainland in a respectful way.
Okay. You talk about like for breeding or just getting like
breeding. Yeah.
I mean, depending on if you're talking about pures, I mean, you can get a pure SD for, I think, probably give or take, maybe around like $1,200, give or take. And that's not a locality, that's just a pure SD. And the thing is, like, people always ask, hey, what do you mean pure SD? And why aren't you putting whatever locality label? Early 2000s up until I want to say roughly 2005-ish, maybe 2004, all the stuff that was getting imported in was coming in as pure labeled pure SD. So there's no locality label, no Kalatoa, Madu, Krumpa. About, like I said, 2004, 2005-ish, when the SD started coming in, that's when they started coming in with the Kalatoa, Madu, Krumpa, Kayawadi localities on it. So people that still have some of the old school stuff, like I have 3 girls that are pure SD, their parents are 2003 imports, and the ones I have are April 2016 girls, but their parents were super old, but yeah, their parents came in as pure SD. So, and like the 3 girls I have are some of the smallest adult females I have, and 2 out of the 3 are proven, and they're legit probably 7 feet animals. So compared to my Kalatoas at least. But I mean, you can get like I said, if you weren't doing pures, you can do 50%, 75%, just a wow type, whatever SD, you can probably do it for under $1,000.
Nice. Okay.
And
so the prices
it's just, I think a lot of the main attraction for the people getting into it is, like say you get a wild type animal. Yeah. It might not have the best colors and this and that because they're darker, but I guarantee you in terms of their intelligence and activity levels and this and that are hands down better than 99% of most snakes out there. The only thing I would say that's probably comparable is say like monitors, because their intelligence level is way out there as well.
Agreed. Nice. Okay. Damn it. I do this once a show. I was going to lead off of that one. I lost it. Chris, you ask a question. Let me think about this one. I was going to lead off of that one into another one. Oh, okay. Hold on. So one of the biggest arguments that you hear right now is that the super dwarf or dwarf community is ruining the mainland, right? Isn't that what we want, though? I mean, for the true animal lovers that love the mainland retic, don't we want them to become more of like a specialty animal where you can't buy them at an expo for $50 for a normal, few $100 for a multi-gene, to where they're disposable? We don't want them to be disposable anymore.
I think the main issue in terms of the mainland versus the SU thing is not that. I mean, there will always be a place for the mainlands, because you'll have your diehard mainland fans that they got into retics hands down because of size and they want a big ass snake. And like I said, there are a select few that keep them in a phenomenal conditions. They're very nicely taken care of and exercise and this and that. But the thing is, that's the select few. That's the exception, not the rule. 99% of the people getting mainlands, at the end of the day, 120-pound snake, if you don't know what you're doing, it's going to send you to the hospital or worse. And if you have kids or animals around, it's going to make it that much worse. And it becomes, honestly, a lot of it, not only just a financial, impact in terms of I can't maintain this animal because I can't feed it or house it correctly because the cage is too small. It's a safety concern. Whereas, don't get me wrong, even a 10-foot SD retic will light your ass up. The way the teeth on a male retic will absolutely slice and dice you like you can't even believe. Like, even when I was in AZ, I posted pictures of like bites from retic, and people are like, that's from a cat, that's from a this or that. I'm like, the fuck are you talking about? That's a retic. No, it's not. I guarantee it's not. I'm like, this is literally the article I took this picture from, and they're like, holy shit, they have absolutely no clue. Where I've had friends where just a grazing bite where they're just doing this, 30-some stitches, sever ligaments and tendons without even trying. It's just one of those things where most keepers have no idea the absolute damage a male retic can do to you. Does it happen a lot? No, thank God. But I mean, people not knowing that, and they do that kissy face shit with them. Like, none of my males are bad, but during breeding season, like, I don't handle them as much, and I'm always on alert where I don't get stupid with them, because like most of the stories I've heard where males just flip, it's not they came out of the cage crazy. They just ran doing, like, the dude was, they were handling their animal, And literally for whatever reason, smell, whatever movement, it just turned, grazed them, and you're talking 20, 30, 40 plus stitches instantly. You know, and I've had friends that go to the ER and the ER nurse like, oh, we got to file a police report. It's a knife fight. They're like, what are you talking about? All this, that's from a snake. No, it's not. Oh yeah, it is. They have zero idea. And 99% of reptile people have no idea how the damage retic can do. I'm sure you can search, like, go online, search retic bites, and you'll see people damn near filleted open, and people like, no, that's fake. That's not from a retic. It absolutely is. People have absolutely no idea how bad the bites can be. So it's just one of those things where a smaller version is still dangerous. Don't get me wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, it's shitty, but there was a lady not too long ago that literally got strangled by an 8-foot retic. That's nothing. 8-foot retic was like, what, a little bigger than a garden hose? Because she had no idea what she was doing something that she shouldn't have. But unfortunately, she lost her life over it from an 8-foot snake, not some 15, 16 foot, 100. That snake was what, maybe 8 to 10 pounds, if that. And again, people are like, oh, they can't do it. Yeah, they can. And if you're stupid and, overestimate your abilities or, take for granted, oh, this thing's a pet. Like, I love my animals. My big super sun girl, like I said, it's like 17 feet. She is the worst animal to feed because she gets stupid where I tongue feed her rabbits, right? She'll come out of the cage and strike in 180-degree opposite direction of where the rabbit is. Now I have like 12 feet of snake out, and I'm like, oh, shit, I got to get her back in the cage. I have a rabbit there, so she's switched on to food. Now I'm the heat signature. Like I said, she's the worst one to feed, and I trust her more than any animal I have. But when it comes to food, she's dumber than shit. So you be careful. And it's one of those, like, the SD has a lot of pluses, don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, it's still a retic, and no matter what anyone says, they're still wild animals, period. Yeah, we've had them 20, 30 years. Their brain capacity is not a dog or a cat. Like, they're reptiles. Yeah, they can recognize to a certain degree, but I wouldn't put it, people are like, oh, you can target train. Yeah, you can, but like anything else, like us, we have a bad day, shit happens. With a smaller animal, it'll be less traumatic and damaging as a big mainland. But I mean, I think it comes down to the keeper more than animals. There's plenty of people that will, 20 years from now still have mainlands, keep them in phenomenal conditions. Likewise, there are people that keep SCs in shitty conditions, even though it's a tenth of the size or this or that. It just comes down to the keeper or knowledge and our ability to say, hey, am I really, adequately prepared to keep a mainland SD? I mean, you can insert any animal in that equation.
Absolutely. So what goes into, you touched on the feeding. What goes into like getting your mainland out?
I just, 9 times out of 10, like just as soon as I move the cage or the sliding glass, because she's in a 632, I don't know what kind of mood she's in, but I still never even reach in. There's times I'll open the cage, she's asleep. I still use a hook. So I'm not just going to randomly grab her. Imagine if you're sleeping, something randomly just grabs and starts pulling on you. Like, I've seen her teeth are probably a third of an inch, quarter of an inch, give or take. And whenever she sheds some stuff and I find them in the cage, I don't need a handful of that, in my hand or this or that, because I just randomly grabbed in there. It's like for the 2 seconds it takes me to get the hook and just rub her and be like, hey, I'm getting you out. And there's times, like I said, I clean my cages all the time. But sometimes she's in a mood, she'll just take a dump and I try to get her out and she's not having it. And I'm like, okay, well, I've tried for 45 minutes to get you out. I don't feel like starting World War III. Unfortunately, you're going to sit in that shit until the next day or the day after when you calm down because, yeah, I can muscle you. That's not going to go well for either one of us,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm in pretty good shape, but I'm not going to outmaneuver a 17-foot snake, period. So just got to be smart about it.
Respect. Yeah, I mean,
But, I mean, there's like other animals. I had my big pied girl that was 18 foot. It was an absolute nightmare, which is why I got rid of her. And I've had full-on drag-out, fights with her where I pulled on her as hard as you pull one of those battle roughs at CrossFit. Nothing to her. And she was like, didn't even care. Didn't even move her. Where, like, I've thrown my shoulder out when I used to work my old pie because, like, she'd come lunging at you like 9 feet of her and just like, yeah, no.
Damn.
At that point, it's not fun. It's a chore. Then you start neglecting the animal, and that's not cool. That's why I was like, I can't do that to her.
Throwing your shoulder out, man.
Yeah.
That just blew my mind. I'm like, what?
Right now, I have my Vision. What is it? The V400s. I have them in two. What the hell is it? 2 6-foot stacks of it, so they're 8 feet tall. And I have a U-line rack for each, stack. The pied got out one day. She came flying out of the cage, which she never did. went under that like 2-foot gap or 3-inch gap at the bottom of the rack and lifted that entire rack up, all 12 cages with animals and all of them. And the whole thing almost tipped over. And I was like, holy shit, all these animals, there's an animal in every cage. She's going to tip this whole thing, crash this whole thing down on me. And I was just like, I'm fucked. I was just like, and there's time. Yeah. So I managed to get her back in the cage, threw my shoulder out. There's water everywhere because I was trying to soak her. And there's times my wife would come running, open the door, and I'm on the ground. And like, and she's like, what the hell? And the back in the cage, I took the glass off. There's water all the ground. And I'm like, yeah, I just threw my shoulder. And like, I couldn't move my shoulder for like 2 weeks. And that's the whole time with her from day one, though. Like, she was a 2009, so she was like 1.5 generations removed from wild caught stock. So she's meaner. She wasn't mean. She was very defensive and flighty. So that's why this is one of those things where when I got to the point that I was like, okay, I'm done with you. I'm going to sell you. You know, she wasn't a cheap snake. And all these people like, oh, I have the money. I got to the point where I was like, dude, I can't sell her to just anyone because it's not the money factor. It's like the snake legitimately will kill someone if they don't know what they're doing. And I don't need someone to be like, oh, that snake killed so-and-so. Who'd they get it from? Oh, I got it from Eric. You know? Like, there's certain, like, ball pythons, you don't worry about it. Maybe monitors you would. Other things, like, same thing with venomous, where it's not the money thing. It's down the road where you're like, the liability alone, yeah. Am I legally off the hook? Yeah, because he bought it. He's an adult, whatever. But it's not that. It's the whole, well, did you vet your buyer? Well, yeah, he gave me the money. That's not vetting him. That's just him handing you cash. Who gives a shit? So, like, I had her on for sale for probably 6 months until I finally found someone that was like, okay, they're legitimately like, they can handle very high strung, very flighty animals that will 100% bite on cue and go. Like, I had her for 8 years. From the day I got her at like 7 feet, she bit me right out of the bag just from the get go. The bigger she got, the more confident she got, where she only went for your face. Anytime you go in the cage and you're cleaning, I'd use the tongue to, like, you know, grab a rag and like whack the cage and stuff. She wouldn't strike at the tongs or this or that. She'd only strike for my face whenever I had to reach in the corner of the cage to get it. And there's times like I was using, I can't remember the brand of the tongs, but she snapped it in half because she bit the rag at the end of it and, you know, wrapped it up and snapped the tongs. I'm like, oh shit. So, and I was just like, she's as big around as my thigh on an empty stomach. And I said, she'd slam 20 pounds of whatever, no problem, and still be hungry. So when I got time to sell her, I'm like, I can't just randomly be like, hey, I'm going to do this and that. Like, yeah, people like, because I was asking 15 grand for it. And people are like, oh, I got it, blah, 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 no big deal, whatever. And I'm like, then I start asking, well, what do you have? Well, I have this and that. I have burns. I'm like, okay. Yeah, have you ever worked with anything aggressive or flighty or this and that? Oh, I'll be fine. I'm like, no. So I'd be like, hey, send me pictures of your, you know, whatever you're keeping in her. Oh, it's a homemade, huge enclosure with the cages are fantastic. But then I was like, she's used to super chill, mellow animals. I'm like, no. I'm like, I don't care about the money. It's like, you're literally gonna die, and I'm gonna be the reason because I was greedy. Like, oh, I just want the money. I'm gonna sell it to you. Like, no, I'm not doing that. That's 6 months of going through all these people that I have the cash, blah blah. I'm like, you know, end of the day, I don't feel right because I feel like a shitty human being if I just like turned a blind eye and be like, yo, I hope you don't die. Have fun with that snake.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah. And some of those animals, like, I worked with her, like I said, I had her 8 years. Not once did she ever calm down. She was always super high strung, bite and piss and sprayed. And the bigger she got, stop biting and, you know, shitting and just bite, or stop spraying, just it was only biting. So, and like I said, I literally yanked on her as hard as I can. Every single, like, I didn't hold back anything, 100%. And she didn't even move. She didn't budge. I have one picture when I was in Mesa when I moved that the animals were in the master bedroom. And there was like the door jamb, the way it's set up, where the wall came out, and she just hung onto this sliver of the door jamb, and I was hanging onto it for 45 minutes. And I didn't take a picture. I should have. I put my hands on the top coil where she was like just squeezed against the wall, and I hung off of her. My feet were off the ground, and I was probably 170 some pounds, just hanging. And my only thing is I was cleaning cages because I knew she couldn't bite, because as soon as she struck, she'd fall off that thing. So I'd just tuck my head, get everything. I was getting all the animals packed up, ready to move out here. But yeah, like, she wasn't an animal to fuck around with. I had friends that would come over. They're like, wait, what's going on? Are you moving? They're just like, they're afraid of, and they're retic people. Like, I don't want to fuck with them. They're like, I don't either. It's just, one of those things where, and the longer I had her, she kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm like, people flat out told me, just freeze her. Because like I said, she's a liability. I know people that have animals that they don't want it, but they can't sell it for that exact same reason because 100% it'll kill someone. And their only alternative, unfortunately, is like before I even sold her, I contacted like 5 or 6 different zoos and educational places, and I said I'd donate her. The only reason they didn't take her, they're like, oh, I want a wild type. I'm like, the parents are wild. They're like, no, like a wild type looking normal retake. I'm like, oh, okay. At one place I said they would take her, but they're like, oh, we're staffed by 100% volunteers. They're all students. I'm like, yeah, no, I can't send this snake. You don't. Oh, no. I'm like, you know, luckily I found one home, but that's the thing. It's like mainlands, and the more people have mainlands where they neglect them, and those animals aren't socialized, like a dog. Say you have a large breed dog that's never been socialized, never been taken out of the house or backyard or whatever. Now you got to rehome it or give it away. Like, that's a huge liability, Like, I don't want to just be like, oh yeah, it's kind of manageable. Well, it's manageable for me, but I knew what I was doing. But at the same time, dude, I'd use those I was using those 40-gallon like black and yellow like totes. That yellow lid is a goddamn shoot. There's times where she was strike at me. I use that as like almost like her head as a wiffle ball and just hit her because like she wouldn't stop coming at me. I'm like, oh shit,
Damn.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Once they get going, man, they don't stop.
Yeah.
I don't know, Luke. You got to make sure you get the right one, bro. You end up with a one like Eric's talking about. It's fucking game over.
That's why you get it as a hatchling. I mean, 9 times out of 10, you raise that from a hatchling, you'll never have issues with it. Like that pirate guy, she was like 6 feet, but she had a chip on her shoulder for whatever reason. That shit never went away.
Damn. So is she still doing better today, or she's still the same?
She's way bigger. I heard she's like grown quite a bit. But
Is she still the same?
What?
Same attitude?
Still the same attitude?
Oh, I heard her attitude's worse actually. So
Oh my god.
Well, it makes sense, yeah, as they get bigger.
More confident, or she knows like back in the day when she was like 8, 9 feet, she'd run for me, Then she got bigger, she wasn't running, she didn't have to. So
He's like, I'm bigger.
yeah. She knows. She's probably like, that Chinaman, I could probably eat him.
Man, they are smart then.
Yeah, no, smart. Rechicks are very, very smart.
Yes, they are. They're one of the smartest fucking snakes I've ever dealt with.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the only snake outside of the venomous families that could give it a run for its money is like the false water cobra.
I heard the false water cobras and even indigos are super, super smart. So I've seen those videos where they're putting the food in like those. I don't know what kind of training thing is like for like I think those are the indigos or no, false water cobras, like where they have to kind of move that like little like hatch and the false water cobra go in there and get whatever is it's crazy.
Yeah,
I've seen that. I gotta check that out.
Yeah, it's pretty entertaining to watch it, man. Reptiles don't get enough credit for the intelligence that they have in general. Once you get into like certain species, it's game over. Like monitors, man, they're so fucking smart.
Monitors, I would love to do. I have zero room for it. Like I said, right now, people are like, oh, why don't you do this and that? Like, I have no time, no room. Like down the road, when I streamline everything, maybe it'd be something where I get as a pet. I don't want to breed it. Like other than rechicks, I'm not breeding anything. Like if I ever get any reptiles here on out, it'd just be a pet, crazy, elaborate, nice setup, and just have it live, a life of just chilling in the best cage possible. I love breeding. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I'm done breeding anything else or getting it because like you going down that wormhole, all of a sudden, one animal turns into 10, turns into you need another room for this. No, I'm good.
Yeah. Like I'm capped on space right now. Like I just moved a bunch of stuff around and freed up some space, and then I was like, I could step this up, step that up, and step this up. I think, and I'm sure you're going to experience this if you're not now. It is more addicting getting involved in the husbandry than it is getting new animals.
Oh, absolutely.
The second we got done with Earl's live, he was showing off stuff, and I was like, oh, I have to do that. And I've been stepping up stuff ever since. I'm like addicted. I'm broke over it.
Stuff like I've seen now, like even like just the advancements in light, like Ryan from VivTech with the UVA, UVB stuff and all this other, like I talked to Arcadia and who was another lighting company I can't remember the other brand, but because like I said, like even the 6x3s and the 8x3s, I want to do full, full spectrum, LED lightings inside and this and that. I have to figure out the UVA, UVB and all that and ventilation and just because I want live plants in there. And other people are like, oh, why don't you do this? Breed isopods in there because, shit, the kind of money people are making in isopods is ridiculous. And I was like, I breed those stag beetles, and there all kinds of crazy shit popping in my head, like, oh, try this, try that, you know? So
Yeah. It's addicting, man. It's stupid addicting how quickly it gets too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like I got heavy into the boas, and it's like the adults I was gonna breed. I'm like, I'm only starting, and it's like where I want to take it is it's gonna be expensive, but it's like it's so fucking worth it once you see everything set up and paid off. Like,
oh, absolutely.
Lights are fired up. You got plants everywhere. You got the misting systems, and then I want to do the surround like Earl was talking about, where you've got like natural sounds going at all times. Like, oh,
yeah,
sounds incredible. So, back to the super dwarfs, though.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
5 years. I mean, by then, probably my big push, depending on if that rainbow ocelot, if he proves out, then I'll start branching out to orange blow snows, Indo caramel snows. But right now, like, hopefully this year, I'll hit those marble snows. And 5 years from now, ideally, everything I have will be on the non-pure stuff. It'll be 75% or higher SD, whatever, more, you know, stuff like that. That's my big thing. Like, eventually, I want everything 75. Ideally, I'd love everything like mid, like 85% or higher. That's not into for a while. But like, hopefully I can check off the marble snow stuff this year. Then down the road, like 5 years, hopefully rainbow snows in the future. Then other stuff I'll have, like I have some of my amory stuff that in 5 years, hopefully we'll be hitting that 90% threshold for, you know, 6-7 gene animals and, you know, 90% ST or higher. So,
nice. I'm excited to watch it happen.
Yeah, no, it's a process. Like I said, everything's stepping stones. You know, it just, yeah. Ideally, if everything goes right, it's great. It happens sooner, but at the end of the day, it is what it is, and you just gotta go with it. As long as it's not a money thing, it's actually you're passionate about it. Like so, the marble thing is taking me forever. Like I said, 9 years to hopefully hit on it this year. And it's been worth it just to see it from beginning when the first time I've ever seen a marble. I'm like, holy shit, I think that thing would look amazing in snow. And back then there was no heads or double heads, no one. So I literally bought the base components, made my own, you know, heads, bred them, made the double heads and bred them back. And I think I'm 3 or 4 different generations in for like multiple, like 4 different breedings to get to where I'm at now, where hopefully this year I see visual marble snows for the first time.
Hell yeah. Your patience is so respectable.
For real.
Thank you.
For real. Everything that you're doing, everything that you did, I'm just like, damn.
No.
Like
once I get that new place, the new facility up and running will be just ridiculous. Cause like I said, I want everything display quality, minus obviously hatching racks, but everything's gonna be huge enclosures just so I can get it done up right. Like, and there's a ton of people I see on Instagram with all these new, crazy, fully done, elaborate enclosures like you're talking about, which is bad as, you know, it looks amazing. It's all the stuff they use from Universal Rock and this and that, or homemade stuff. Just, dude, it kicks ass. And I think that's what, you know, we should shoot for. Because at the end of the day, like keeping the reptiles is great, but like I said, if we're not reaching the outsiders, we're not doing our part to spread the, you know, to help our community in the long run, because that's what we need. It's like you have a bunch of, you know, random, like your friends and family that come to the house that don't know anything about reptiles. They can see them in the normal stack of cages that were paper, dog bowl, and hide, and they're like, yeah, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But imagine, like you said, your lower cage all set up and all done up, and you have someone that doesn't know anything about reptiles come in there and sees it. You're like, holy shit, that thing looks amazing. That's what I want.
Absolutely.
And do you go to any, like, reptile shows, Kurt?
I do. Like, I just went to the Pomona one. I've been to Tinley before. Usually just the Cali ones. I'll, depending on if I'm out in Arizona, I'll try to do the Mesa one, you know, when I'm out there. But other than that, I don't shoot for the shows. I mean, if I'm free and I'm not doing anything, I'll go to the shows, but I usually don't go out of my way to go to the shows. I usually go just to hang out, check out, like, did you guys go to the Pomona show? You went, right?
He went. I did. Oh, you didn't go, right? I thought you did.
No, you screwed it up.
No, I mean,
I'm never going to let that go.
There was, what the hell did it? They had the koi, which I haven't seen there, but they had, those ant farms. Those ant farms are dope as shit at the Pomona show. Because I was telling my wife, I was like, you need to get this for your classroom. but you got to mount this shit because your kids will grab it and throw that shit across the room. But yeah, but they had all these crazy. They had like the honeypot ant or honeypot ants, all leaf cutters and all kinds of stuff. It's just so cool to go to the reptile shows now where it's not ball pythons, it's not just snakes. It's like that weird ass niche shit that you're like, oh, that's super dope. Like all those crazy stag beetles and this and that.
Yeah.
Guy, I saw that at the Anaheim show a couple years ago. I ended up buying that like book on breeding like those exotic beetles and stuff. And my wife's like, gonna start breeding those. Like, hopefully, maybe I'll try that shit in the retake cage once I get those big, enclosures set up, and just kind of branch out and do stuff for fun. It's one thing to like, oh, I have to breed it, but just to keep something new or different where you're like learning about it. That's like, to me, that's the coolest part where you're all amped up about going online, finding, reading, learning whatever it is about that new thing you want to get just for fun. If you breed it, great, but if you don't, who cares?
Absolutely. I concur 100%. The vendor that had the ant farms were here in Arizona, our last expo.
Okay.
It was pretty sick.
Yeah.
Real quick before I forget it, if you have the chance, you should come out in April.
Okay. Is it the Mesa show?
Yeah, the Mesa show, not Repticon, but the main Mesa one.
No, I've been going to that one. The Repticon, like, for the whole time I was there, like, the Repticon was garbage, especially when they had it at the fairgrounds. Holy shit. I was like, they never promoted it. They never did anything. It's like, even this year at the Pomona show, like, I think the event organizer had like 100-some billboards all throughout Southern California. It was on radio. It was like broadcast. Like, that was probably one of the busiest shows I've ever been to. It was a great turnout. I heard all the vendors did really well. So, I mean, that's the way it should be. And a lot of the people going there are non-reptile people, which is even better.
Oh, yeah. You guys had the news there, too. Like, I've seen it, like, started trending for a while. Like, people were talking about how big it was and all the crazy shit they saw. So, it's good shit. What advice would you offer to a newcomer to the reptile community?
I just learn as much as you can. Just be a giant sponge and just go in the grooves and, I mean, just participate. And the biggest thing is I always tell people always ask me, well, okay, I'm new to the groups. I have these animals. I mean, obviously I'm like years out from breeding. I was like, dude, just go in the group, participate. Just, show your face and be like, hey, these are my animals. And the thing is, the cool thing about the groups, beside when you put aside the politics and the ego trips and all that, is just watching people's animals grow with them, Like, you'll see people get whatever new animals, whether it's retics or boas, ball pythons, whatever, and like they're genuinely excited and they're to learn and like, and for the most part, I think a lot of people are willing to help. Once if that new person is not super arrogant about, oh, I know what I'm doing. Like, no, you don't. You literally just said you've got this animal for X amount of weeks or months or whatever, and just learn and just go on and do your own part to basically offer hey put your name out there in the groups and just get familiar with other people. They know you, so that down the road when you do breed, they know who you are. You don't need a huge collection. You don't need some big ass social media following to sell your animals in the future. People just need to know who you are. Oh no, Eric's new to the group, but I've seen him in the group for 5 years. This is his first clutch from these two animals that I've literally watched him post on and talk about for the last 5 years as he raised up as his first breeding attempt of XYZ, whatever, which is cool, because that's where you get your customer base where people know he's legitimate. He's not some fly by night. I'm gonna bang these out, sell them, and get the hell out of the community type of thing. Where they know you're legitimately passionate about it. Like, make yourself known, get out there, talk to people. That's my best advice is that. And it's always nice where when you have problems with whatever animal, you can go on Google search whatever. But then you're like, oh, I have this problem. I'm gonna go talk to so and so. He's in groups. I've been talking to this guy for months or years. Even as I raise my animals, I want to see if he's ever had this issue of whatever, because whatever, like, just blanket statement, like care guide you get online is great. But when you talk to someone that might have actually gone through the same, situation you have, it helps like, oh, okay, well, this is how he handled it. Or, like I tell people when I was in Arizona with the retics, I was like, I had to run like my AC, but then like, Arizona's dry as shit for retics. So you have no humidity, which is a huge problem. And thank God that I was in an apartment complex. I had its own like bathroom, so I closed the door to the master bathroom and run that shower because I wasn't paying water, so I don't give a shit. I'd run that shower on max hot for like an hour straight, crank up the humidity to like 80-some%, and just be like, okay. Whenever it went down, did the same thing and find, I was using those Vicks vapor rub humidifiers until those short circuited, and then the other ones, from Walgreens or whatever. You just got to find a way to work around that. The community issues in Arizona, Whereas, you know, if you were to ask someone in North Carolina, they're gonna be like, "What issues? I have no issues. I do nothing." You know. So
Yeah.
like I said, like as a new person, you want to find local people that maybe been in your shoes a month ago, a year ago, 5 years ago. You know, because like say you have issues with your recheck out in Arizona, you just put whatever, you know, issues on Google, you're like it'll come up whatever, you know. But depending on where you are geographically, like that plays a huge part in whatever issues you have or don't have. And I always tell people rechicks are one of the hardiest animals, other than if you freeze them or cook them, they'll damn near survive anything. But it also really is highly dependent on where you live. Like the one thing I realized, like Arizona, when I was out there, like I said, 7 years, my breeding season was usually from about August until February, March, depending on monsoons and whatnot. When I moved out here, right now my shit breeds year round, which is fantastic because I don't have to worry about, hey, I need to cram every single female I have to breed in 3 or 4 months, which I don't want 100, 200, 300 some babies and, you know, and take it. That's fuck that. Whereas out here, everything's spread out. Like like I said, I don't food cycle my animals. When they go, they go. But since I've been out here for the first 18 months, I had my incubator running nonstop for almost 2 years straight because I either had stuff going in or coming out. You know, so it's a learning curve. I've talked to other people, like when I moved out here, and I was like, dude, what the hell? Why is my girl cycling like in June? And people are like, oh, when I lived out there, yeah, my recheck spread year round. I'm like, oh shit, that definitely wasn't the case in Arizona. So you got to learn, like, hey, where you're at, like whatever parameters that fit for your animals, like they'll change. You know, and once I came out here, I realized that. I was like, okay, I got to talk to people that are currently out here. Hey, is this normal? Oh yeah, you know, oh okay, cool. I'm not freaking out about it.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the humidity out here is a fucking issue. And I'm so glad to hear somebody else uses the shower trick or used the shower trick. That's like I missed it this time. I fucked up. I showed her off last night. Normally what I'll do when she's going into shed, like right as she's coming out of blue, I'll take her in for like my mess around with her, like free handling her. I'll just take her into the shower room and I'll sit in there with the shower running, and I don't usually have to soak her, just hanging out in there for like the 20, 30 minutes and then take her back.
Yeah.
You know, it's been working really, really well. And I just fucked up and missed it. I knew it too.
Yeah. No, I just like, I've had times where like when I was out there, I'd go on trips and come back and I'd come back to horrible dry sheds. I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna crank up the humidity. Like I'd run the shower like nonstop. Like I said, I'm in an apartment. I'm not paying water. What do I care? People are like, wait, you run the water for what? Hours on end? Yeah, I don't care. But it works. Like I said, you just gotta find workarounds for where you're at. I have friends that, you know, Midwest, you know, in the wintertime, they have to run their heater because obviously it's freezing cold. They end up doing those like, you know, 200-300 gallon little ponds in the middle of their reptile room. So you have constant moving water, and they, you know, just, you gotta find things that work.
Absolutely, I concur.
All
So
right,
it looks like your question got stolen.
yeah, I saw that, dude. I was about to ask this question too. What if she
Did you
asked?
want a wrap up question real quick?
Most exciting thing I think is just seeing that our new direction for keeping retics, the bigger and better enclosures, and just the whole like kind of scaling back on animals. Because I mean, reptiles in general is so easy for us, even with retics, which sucks. Not that we're hoarding them, but a lot of people, myself included, throughout the years I've done it, where you get it in over your head. You know, you're like, you know, people go in those buying frenzies. Why? I don't know. It just happens where you're like, all of a sudden you buy like 1 or 2 animals, and for other animals it might work, like ball pythons. I mean, they're not going to eat you out of house and home. They're not going to outgrow you. But you'll see in some of those groups, retics, like people are like, oh, I just bought 6 new hatchlings. Like, oh, okay, that's a lot of animals. But the whole push to right now, where I think everyone, even in the mainland, some of the guys are like, okay, they want to do bigger and see what they can do with, you know, with their space they have, or cutting back and just doing, you know, less and more type mentality. I think that's the coolest thing. The one thing I would change is probably just the volume of breeding, especially for retics in general. Even SCs are great, but they're still not for everyone. I know a lot of people are like, oh, basically SCs are great for anyone. No, they're not. Like, kind of the way I look at it is like SCs are that high maintenance animal where, yeah, they're smaller, but you definitely got to do your part, period. So if you want an animal that's going to chill and do nothing, get a ball python. I mean, besides their feeding response, which kind of sucks. I mean, if you don't really have to do anything, ball python. But if you want something that has an intelligence that's super active and it's alert, you know, SCs are cool. but still, yeah, they're smaller, but there's still a lot of work in terms of compared to other animals, like example, ball python or king snake or corn snake. They're not as much as a mainland, but there's still a lot of work, and they're great animals for the right keeper. Like the one thing I don't like is the fact that, all these, people are pushing SCs are great. They're small. You have all the color palette and morphs of the mainlands, but they're way smaller. Yeah, it's somewhat true, but it's still the keeper's responsibility to do their part because they have to. Like, and the thing is to push with having bigger cages. Like, people tend to like to buy lots of animals up front, then trying to figure out in the back end, which is horrible. It usually doesn't end well for the animals.
No.
Absolutely. They're going to retake SD or not.
Absolutely. It's it's tough, man. I hope that super dwarfs over the long term and with proper keeping and the way the industry is going are going to be the answer to the mainland issue, and watching them cycle the system. And because nothing breaks my heart more than you're on the same page as watching the mainland come up, because exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
What do you think? I always ask my wife, I'm like, what do you think the odds are the proper keeper gets that snake? Because I would say it's 1 to 10.
Probably less than that. Because the shitty thing is, people always, they put it back on US Arc about, hey, what are you doing? It's not that. It's those shitty keepers and shitty breeders, or even not breeders, sellers that will sell to anyone at the shows where, like, I've seen literally, like, I've been at the Mesa show where the kids running around, I just got this, and they got like a retic, and you're like, and the parent has no idea what the hell the kid just bought. You're like, wrong. It could work. Like I said, I got my first retic when I was like, I don't know, 12, 13, something like that. And I had that snake 13, 14 years. It's like 18 feet when I got rid of her. But I mean, far and few, there are exceptions. The thing is, it's like, as the, seller, breeder, whatever, it's like, if you're producing so many animals at the end of the year, you need to blow out sales of 50% off, you're fucking wrong, period. End of story. I don't care who you are, whatever your name you have. Like, when you're like, basically buy one, get one free shit because you have so much overstock that you're not selling it. People always harp on, breeders, hey, breeder X is having this many animals he's producing. But is he selling out every year? Then it's not an issue. You could have another breeder be like, I produced 200 animals, but at the end of the year, I have 150 left. Whereas this guy produced 600, all 600 sold. There's a big difference. It's not the volume, it's how many are you finding good homes for. Good homes compared to just a home or just a paycheck for you. That's the biggest issue I see. And the shitty thing is, honestly, in my opinion, we will probably eventually lose our rights for interstate commerce, especially with rejects, because I honestly think it's not an if, but when something really, really bad happens, unfortunately. Because honestly, you look at a lot of these groups where on the mainland side, you have some of the most irresponsible people keeping an animal that will absolutely annihilate you and your kids. And it just takes one super horrible incident where, when an adult dies, people kind of, they're sad, some laugh or whatever. But when a fucking kid dies, shit happens instantly overnight. God forbid someone's kid dies from a retic or a big constrictor, whatever state, nationwide, that shit will happen overnight. I mean, let's like a parallel. Look at gun stuff. Adults die from that shit all the time. No one, bats an eye, whatever. Something happens to a kid, shit happens overnight. Imagine that sensationalized media. Oh, giant snake kills, or God forbid, eats a little like an infant. Holy shit. It'd be game over overnight. It sucks to think that, but there's a lot of irresponsible keepers that are literally, I'm using this pegboard and bricks and books to keep the top on the tank. Like, holy shit, like, really? Like, and I've seen that, like, people send me this, and I'm like, I'm not sharing that. You know how bad that makes us look? Like some dude keeping a 14-foot, retic in a 55-gallon tank with a pegboard and bricks and books on top. I'm like, and they just like had some little kid in the background. I'm like, oh God, that's the CPS waiting to happen. And it's unfortunate, but I mean, us as responsible keepers, I mean, we can't harp on it. We can only control what's in our little bubble, and that's all we can do. Like, I'm not at the SD to please people, post stuff, and they're like, oh, well, is this SD? Like, that's not my place to say. I'm gonna do me. I'm gonna make sure my shit's on point, and people will be like, oh, well, Eric's not doing his part. I'm doing my part by doing the best I can for my animals, and whenever I can help out in the community in terms of awareness or just education, presentation, and stuff like that, But dude, I'm not your place. And the thing is, I don't want to be. I hate babysitting grown ass adults, dude. You know, it's not my job.
Agreed.
Agreed. Respect. Well, I think we should end it on that note. That was phenomenal. I could not have said it better myself. And thank you for everything tonight, Eric. I really appreciate it. It's been.
Man, I appreciate you guys letting me on anytime.
For real, that was awesome information. That was a shit ton of information. I was just like,
no, I was expecting that, man. I'm telling you, ever since I watched you on Trap Talk, I was like, if I ever do a podcast, like Eric Lee is like one of the top of the names I need on the pod.
I appreciate that, man.
You changed my perspective back then. You changed my perspective today. It's incredible what you've done and what you continue to do every single day.
Dude, all we can do is pay it forward, man. That's all it is. Like, for what I know, dude, I'd happily pass it on to the next generation so they do it better. That's all it is.
We gotta have a part 2 for real.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you're open to a part 2 sometime down the road this year, I'll reach out.
Road whenever I get that new place, God willing, sometime in the near future. Yeah, for sure.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah.
Let's go.
I'm on hell yeah, but all right. Let's shout out the sponsors, Nico. Of course, we got Red Time Crew. Go check out their merch. They're over on Instagram. Hey, Eric, do you have like a YouTube or anything else?
No, just my Instagram is I don't even know what it is. Just Eric Lee.
I think I pinned it. I pinned it in the comment.
Something like that. Yeah, I gotta look at it. Like in the future, I'll do a dedicated I'll do the SC Snow King actually handle on IG down the road. Hopefully, more than likely, my wife would do it for me because my big thing is I just do the snake thing. Everyone's like, you need social media. Yeah, I do, but I just grind out and do my snakes, and I'm not it is what it is. There you go.
They dropped it right there.
Yeah.
There it is.
Also with the link.
Also, always coming through.
Yes, sir.
Right there in the bottom.
Go follow Eric if you're not following Eric. You're talking about Super Dwarves. I don't want to hear it. Thank you again, Eric. I can't, just humbling to have you on and really appreciate it.
Pleasure, guys. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely.
I really this life was phenomenal. Yes, I love this life. I'm not gonna lie.
Again, man, we're just a couple of freaking ginormous fans that want to bring it to the viewers. That's really what makes this podcast happen.
I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Yes, sir.
If you're down in Chula Vista, man, let me know. We go get tacos, check out some SCs.
Absolutely, man. I'm definitely probably on the way to Pomona.
Yeah.
What's the next one? Anaheim? Are you going to Anaheim?
I might, depending when is it?
June or July?
Yeah, I think I might be around for that.
Okay. Awesome. I'll hit you up and come on down there. Do you still have that car? What was it? It was a Honda.
Which one? The Element?
Yeah, the Element.
Yeah, I have that.
Yeah, the next time you're down here, let me know when I'm down there.
Yeah,
bring the trim back to life for you.
That's a project car, but that's a 20-year project right now.
All
right. On that note, we're out of here. Thank you again, Eric. We appreciate you.
Anytime.
Good night, guys. We out.
like a